Chapter 617. Past Life. The little girl looked at Mu Nanji in the sky. What does my past life have to do with me? Mu Nanji smiled. That may be so, but your past life was not simple. The little girl looked straight at Mu Nanji. I am who I am. No karma can affect me. Mu Nanji looked at the little girl. Some karma is yours to begin with. No one can force it on you. The little girl was expressionless. Why say so much? Come and fight. Mu Nanji did not get angry at the little girl's aggressiveness. She smiled. You want to unify the chaos verse? The little girl looked straight at Mu Nanji. The chaos verse is always at war. If I unify it, the world will be at peace. Mu Nanji smiled. Then do you know that the world is divided for a long time and united for a long time? Even if you unify the chaos verse now, it will still return to war in the future. The little girl was expressionless. Let's not talk about the future. Let's do what we do now. Mu Nanji was about to speak when she suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian, who was standing on the broken city wall not far away. Yi Xian was in the middle of treating his injuries. As if sensing Mu Nanji's gaze, Yi Xian looked up at her. Mu Nanji sized up Yi Xian. Her eyes flashed with surprise. The next moment, she pinched her fingers together. Soon, the space above Yi Xian suddenly trembled. Yi Xian suddenly asked. Do you want to read my fortune? Mu Nanji stopped and looked at Yi Xian. Can I? Yi Xian thought for a moment and nodded. Fine. I also want to see what kind of person I was in my past life. Mu Nanji smiled. Her fingers began to move quickly. Soon, a mysterious power appeared in the surroundings. This power was something Yi Xian had never seen before. At this moment, an image suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. Yi Xian looked up curiously. However, at this moment, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky, and an extremely terrifying pressure came crashing down from the sky. Seeing this, Mu Nanji frowned. She looked up. How dare you interfere in my affairs? You. Suddenly, her expression changed. It's not Tendo. As if she had thought of something, she suddenly stopped and looked at Yi Xian. There's something that doesn't want me to read your fortune. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Who is it? So domineering. Mu Nanji shook his head. I don't know, but he should be very strong. Yi Xian said, You're so powerful, can you forcibly calculate it? Mu Nanji thought for a moment, then nodded. I'll give it a try. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand, and a wave of energy shot into the sky. In the next moment, the pressure in the sky was instantly erased. Mu Nanji continued. Soon, a screen appeared above Yi Xian's head. This time, the image was clearer. In the image was a mountain range, and in the sky, countless demon beasts were wreaking havoc. At this time, Mu Nanji suddenly raised his head. In the next moment, a mysterious energy suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. Boom! The image above Yi Xian's head instantly disappeared without a trace. Yi Xian, Mu Nanji's face sank slightly. Yi Xian looked at Mu Nanji. Can it still be read? Mu Nanji shook her head. If my main body was here, I could try. Unfortunately, this is a clone. Saying this, he looked at Yi Xian. Someone is hiding your fortune. It's very strong. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Who is helping me hide it? Mu Nanji smiled. I don't know about that. Saying this, she turned to look at Tang Yen and the others. Tang Yen quickly bowed respectfully. Greetings, ancestor. Mu Nanji smiled. I left this clone here in the hope that when the Tang clan is in danger, I will see if I can save it. If you let me out now, the Tang clan will have no trump card in the future. Tang Yen said in a deep voice, The invasion of God Nation is the most dangerous moment for the Tang clan. Mu Nanji nodded slightly, and then she looked at the little girl below. At this moment, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared in front of Mu Nanji. The white-haired old man looked at Mu Nanji. Please enlighten me. Looking at the white-haired old man, Mu Nanji's eyes flashed with surprise. Emperor Realm. Emperor Realm. Hearing Mu Nanji's words, everyone present was shocked, especially the Star Lord and the others. They hadn't expected that there would be an Emperor Realm expert in God Nation. Mu Nanji smiled. Emperor Realm, interesting. As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and slapped. Not far away, the white-haired old man suddenly disappeared. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, the white-haired old man instantly retreated. This time, he retreated more than 1,000 zhang. As soon as he stopped, a powerful force suddenly swept towards him. The white-haired old man's pupils suddenly shrank. He suddenly put his palms together, and the space around him suddenly swelled up. It was forcefully pushed up by his powerful strength. In the next moment, he suddenly punched forward. He didn't use any martial arts, just a simple punch. This punch directly formed a strange vortex in the space in front of him. At this moment, Mu Nanji arrived. Bang! Everyone watched as the space in front of the white-haired old man exploded, and a powerful force swept towards the surroundings. In an instant, the powerful force caused the space in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers to ripple. At this moment, the white-haired old man had retreated more than 3 kilometers. Moreover, his body had completely shattered. The white-haired old man who was in soul form looked towards the distance where Mu Nanji was walking slowly towards him. Tang Yen and the others instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw this scene. At this time, the 2 old men behind the little girl suddenly appeared in front of Mu Nanji. Looking at Mu Nanji, the 2 old men suddenly drew their swords. OM. 2 sword howls resounded in the sky, and then 2 rays of light flashed through the sky and slashed towards Mu Nanji. 2 Emperor Realm experts. The Star Lord and the others' faces instantly turned extremely unsightly when they saw the 2 old men attack. Not only were they Emperor Realm experts, but they were also peak extraordinary sword saints. It could be said that they were much stronger than the white-haired old man from before. In the sky, Mu Nanji's face was expressionless as she pointed forward lightly, split. As soon as she spoke, the 2 rays of light actually split bit by bit until they turned into nothingness. The 2 old men's faces instantly sank when they saw this. Mu Nanji was about to attack again when she suddenly frowned. Because she noticed that her body was becoming more and more illusory. At this moment, she recalled that she was only a clone, and she couldn't consume too much energy. Tang Yen and the others noticed this as well, and their faces turned extremely unsightly. If Mu Nanji disappeared, then who could resist the experts of the divine nation? Suddenly, Mu Nanji looked down at the little girl. The little girl's face was expressionless. Do you want to kill me? Mu Nanji smiled, no. The little girl glanced at Mu Nanji, why? Mu Nanji laughed, because you can't. But I want to see your true strength. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly shot towards the little girl below under everyone's gazes. Not far away, the 2 old men's faces changed drastically. They were about to attack, but the little girl stopped them. The little girl looked up at the charging Mu Nanji, and in the next moment, she suddenly drew her sword. Buzz! A ray of sword light soared into the sky. Boom! In the sky, the sword light instantly shattered, and Mu Nanji was already in front of the little girl. At this moment, all the experts of the divine nation were shocked. However, no one dared to move. Because Mu Nanji was too close to the little girl. Mu Nanji looked at the little girl in front of her, but she didn't attack again. Instead, she smiled faintly, a genius. As soon as she finished speaking, her body became more and more illusory. Soon, Mu Nanji completely disappeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the Star Lord and the others in the sky instantly became extremely unsightly. Mu Nanji couldn't kill the ruler of the divine nation. Below, their army was already being crushed by the divine nation. Whether it was the Tang clan's cavalry, the divine Dao army, or the Lawful Alliance's enforcers, they were all completely suppressed. Moreover, there were countless casualties. At this moment, the little girl suddenly waved her right hand. Kill them all. As soon as she finished speaking, dozens of afterimages suddenly leaped out from the surrounding space. In the next moment, screams resounded incessantly from below. Instant kill. Wherever these afterimages passed, blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, the Star-Lord and the others were horrified. Because even the Tang clan cavalry and the Divine Tao army were instantly killed by these afterimages. All of them were instantly killed. They couldn't resist at all. Not only that, but countless experts suddenly appeared in the sky. These were the experts of the clans and sects. Crushed. At this moment, the divine nation had completely crushed the other three desolate worlds in terms of both numbers and strength. The little girl slowly walked towards the Great Wall. Screams resounded all around her. On the mountain in the distance, Yi Xian looked down in silence. At this moment, Zhao Mu was about to make a move. Yi Xian suddenly said, "What's the point of making a move?" Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said softly, "We can't stop them." The divine nation was unstoppable. No one could stop the little girl's footsteps. At this moment, in the sky, the Star-Lord suddenly said, "Let me do it." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a black diagram suddenly flew into the sky. This diagram expanded with the wind, and in an instant, the entire diagram covered the entire sky. The sky instantly darkened. Countless bolts of black lightning flashed within the map. Everyone looked up at the map. Bolts of lightning flashed wildly within the map. Soon, the lightning suddenly fell towards the divine nation experts below. The Lawful Alliance's ultimate treasure, the star map. This map surpassed the Tao realm and was one of the Lawful Alliance's trump cards. At this moment, the little girl suddenly turned her head. Not far behind her, a golden spear suddenly appeared. The next moment, the spear turned into a beam of golden light that shot into the sky. In front of everyone's eyes, the spear directly pierced the map. Rumble. The sky shook violently and the star map instantly cracked. Seeing this scene, the Star-Lord's expression changed drastically. He quickly put away the star map. The little girl coldly looked at the Star-Lord. "I don't want to see these 5 people in half an hour." As her voice fell, several powerful auras suddenly rushed towards the Star-Lord and the others. Emperor Realm experts. All of them were Emperor Realm experts. In the sky, the Demon King suddenly roared, "Summon the soul of the former king." As his voice fell, countless demonic beasts in the mountains suddenly roared in unison. In the next moment, a beam of light shot into the sky. Within that beam of light, a middle-aged man quietly appeared. Nanming Demon King. Half human, half demon. The most stunning demon king in the history of the demon race. The little girl stopped and looked at Nanming Demon King. At this moment, Nanming Demon King suddenly looked at Yi Xian, who was not far to his right. To be more precise, he was looking at Yi Xian's abdomen. Looking at Yi Xian's abdomen, Nanming Demon King narrowed his eyes. "Such a supreme treasure is actually on you." As his voice fell, a powerful aura suddenly shrouded Yi Xian. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression changed. Motherf asterisk Ker, is he trying to mess with me? P.S. Counting with my fingers, there will be a large number of monthly votes today. Chapter 618. At this moment, everyone's gaze fell on Yi Xian. Treasure. It was no secret that Yi Xian had a 5th-dimensional treasure. However, no one expected that Nanming Demon King would take a fancy to Yi Xian's treasure. Yi Xian was out of luck. Some experts revealed expressions of schadenfreude. Especially the Star-Lord. Although he was facing a great enemy, he was happy to see Yi Xian die. Could Yi Xian stop Nanming Demon King? He definitely could not. After all, Nanming Demon King was an expert on the same level as Mu Nanji. Although it was only a clone, it was not something that Yi Xian could contend with. Nanming Demon King looked at Yi Xian with a fiery gaze. He was about to speak when an illusory Xiao Ta appeared in Yi Xian's palm. In the next moment, Yi Xian threw the prison pagoda to the side. It landed in front of the little girl. Everyone, the little girl looked at the prison pagoda expressionlessly. At this moment, Nanming Demon King's gaze fell on the little girl. In the sky, the Star Lord's expression became extremely gloomy. He did not expect Yi Xian to be so decisive and directly hand over the treasure. Not only did this perfectly resolve his crisis, but it also successfully attracted Nanming Demon King's attention to the divine nation. Misfortune was diverted. Yi Xian's expression was calm, and no one could tell that he was angry. Not far away, the little girl looked at the prison pagoda. In the end, she opened her palm and the prison pagoda landed in her palm. Fifth dimensional treasure? Nangong Wan, who was standing beside the little girl, nodded. This should be the treasure from the fifth dimension. The little girl lightly pointed at the prison pagoda and said softly, "Interesting." At this moment, a pressure suddenly enveloped the little girl. She looked up, and in the next moment, a ray of sword light directly crushed the pressure. Seeing this scene, Demon Monarch Nanming narrowed his eyes. Sword God. The little girl ignored the Nanming Demon Monarch and continued to examine the World Prison Pagoda in her hands. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. At this moment, Nanming Demon King took a step forward and looked down at the little girl. "Are you going to hand it over yourself, or do you want me to kill you and take it for myself?" Hearing that, the little girl looked up at Nanming Demon Monarch. "Who do you think you are?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly soared into the sky. Buzz! A sword cry tore through the sky. Everyone looked up. In the air, Nanming Demon King squinted his eyes. He had not expected this little girl to take the initiative. His gaze turned cold, and in the next instant, a powerful pressure pressed down from above. Chi! A tearing sound suddenly resounded in the sky. In the next moment, the space in an area of tens of thousands of kilometers trembled violently. At this moment, the little girl had already returned to her original position. The sky had also returned to normal. Nanming Demon King was still standing there, but at this moment, his body was completely illusory, almost transparent to the point of being invisible. Seeing this scene, the Demon Monarch's face instantly turned ugly. In the air, Nanming Demon King stared at the little girl below. Genius. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared completely. After Nanming Demon King disappeared, the little girl below looked up at the Star-Lord and the others in the sky. Kill. In the next moment, several powerful auras shot towards the Star-Lord and the others. Seeing this scene, the faces of the Star-Lord and the others changed. They were only at the Tendo realm, but the ones attacking them were all at the Emperor realm. How could they resist? There was no way to resist. At this moment, the Star-Lord suddenly said, "Sir, I am willing to surrender." Surrender. Surrender. As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked and looked at the Star-Lord. Even perfected Master Chu and the rest were in disbelief. Obviously, they did not expect the Star-Lord to choose to surrender. At this moment, the Star-Lord suddenly appeared in front of the little girl. He knelt down on one knee. "I am willing to pledge my loyalty to you, sir." Everyone present, Yi Xian also did not expect the Star-Lord to surrender directly, and kneel down to surrender. What was he playing at? Not far away, the little girl walked in front of the Star-Lord, too late. As soon as her voice fell, the Star-Lord's face changed instantly. He retreated frantically, and then, under everyone's shocked gaze, he escaped just like that. An old man beside the little girl wanted to give chase, but the little girl shook her head. No need. Following the Star-Lord's escape, the morale of the Great Wall instantly fell to the bottom. How could they fight? The dignified Star-Lord actually fled just like that. How could they fight? Soon, more and more people fled. However, the little girl did not let these people go. Instead, she chose to kill them all. Not far away, Yi Xian said in a low voice, "She wants to cleanse." Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said in a low voice, leaving these people alive is an unstable factor, and they are not easy to tame. Killing them directly is more beneficial to the rule of the god nation. This little girl is really ruthless. Little girl? Zhao Mu's expression was quite strange. In the void, after the Star-Lord fled, the Monster King also immediately turned and left. At the same time, the countless monster army retreated like the tide. At this time, a voice rang out in the sky, retreat. The Divine Tao Army's commander, Yi Zhantian. As soon as Yi Zhantian's voice fell, all the Divine Tao Army retreated. The little girl looked at the commander of the guards not far away, chase them, don't leave any alive. The commander bowed respectfully, then led the guards in pursuit of the Divine Tao Lords. The rest of the God Nation powerhouses also chased after those who fled. Kill them all. In the void, Tang Yen also left with the Tang clan powerhouses. Only Perfected Chu and the Southern Sect Martial Master were left. The two looked at each other, then turned and left. After using all their trump cards, they could see no hope. They could not stop this god nation. Forcibly resisting now would only be suicide. Beside Yi Xian, Zhao Mu glanced at Yi Xian, then turned and left. The Southern Sect Martial Master told her to leave. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Miss Zhao, are you going to leave just like that? Zhao Mu did not answer. Yi Xian said again, will you miss me? Zhao Mu turned and looked coldly at Yi Xian, then made a throat-slitting gesture. Yi Xian, soon, Zhao Mu left, but before she left behind a bottle of medicine for healing. Yi Xian looked at the medicine in his hand and smiled. At this time, his expression suddenly changed, and he turned around. In front of him stood a little girl. It was the Divine Master of God Nation. The little girl looked at Yi Xian, but did not say anything. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, can you return the pagoda to me? The little girl looked at the World Prison Pagoda in her palm, then looked at Yi Xian. You gave it to me. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I regret it. The little girl looked at Yi Xian for a long time, then finally, she pointed with a finger, and the World Prison Pagoda returned to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned. She really returned it? The little girl was expressionless. It has already recognized you as its master, I do not accept second-hand goods. Yi Xian, the World Prison Pagoda suddenly shook violently, it felt a great humiliation. Yi Xian hurriedly grabbed the World Prison Pagoda, calm down, or you will be beaten. The World Prison Pagoda was still unwilling, it wanted to charge at the little girl, but Yi Xian held it tightly. The little girl suddenly said, is it going to beat me? Yi Xian looked at the little girl, she said, let it come. Yi Xian loosened his grip, but the World Prison Pagoda did not charge over. It floated in front of Yi Xian, trembling. At this time, Xiao Linger's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind, it wants you to hold it back. Yi Xian, soon, the World Prison Pagoda was thrown back into Yi Xian's body. This fellow was really too embarrassing. At this time, the little girl suddenly said, your sword. Yi Xian looked at the little girl, my sword? The little girl nodded, take a look. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the Executing Heaven sword appeared in his hand. He released his hand, and the Executing Heaven sword flew in front of the little girl. The little girl sized up the Executing Heaven sword, then said, sharp. The Executing Heaven sword trembled slightly, as if in reply. The little girl took out the sword at her waist, and at this time, the Executing Heaven sword returned to Yi Xian. The little girl frowned slightly. The Executing Heaven sword did not seem to like her sword. The little girl looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand. The Executing Heaven sword trembled, then returned to Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian looked at the little girl, it means that everything in the past is in the past. It does not want to recall the past. At this point, he looked at the Executing Heaven sword in his hand. This was a sword with a story. The little girl nodded slightly, and did not say anything else. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, can you show me your sword? The little girl loosened her grip, and the sword in her hand flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian sized up the sword in his hand. It looked very ordinary, but it contained a mysterious power. Yi Xian looked at the little girl, and asked, "What sword is this?" The little girl shook her head. "It came to my side when I was born." Yi Xian had a strange expression on his face. What was this? Did this sword come by itself? Yi Xian carefully sized up the sword in his hand, and then said, "Are you interested in following me?" The little girl, at this time, the sword in his hand suddenly flew away, and it flew in front of the little girl, trembling slightly. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. "It said that you are thick-skinned." Yi Xian, at this time, the little girl turned to leave, but she soon stopped and looked at Yi Xian. "You are the city lord of Divine Martial City?" Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said, 3 days later, my people will enter Divine Martial City to take over. At that time, you can choose to accept or reject. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Is there no room for negotiation?" The little girl shook her head, "No." Yi Xian nodded, "Then send someone powerful, or I won't be able to kill to my heart's content." The little girl said softly, "As you wish." After saying that, she disappeared not far away. At this time, a woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was Zhuojing. Zhuojing looked at Yi Xian, and blinked. "Your sword, can I see it too?" Yi Xian shook his head decisively, "No." Zhuojing said angrily, "Why?" Yi Xian was expressionless. "If I show it to you, will you return it?" After saying that, he turned to leave. Zhuojing suddenly blocked in front of Yi Xian, and she looked at Yi Xian, and said seriously, "Swordsman, tell me, as long as I become as shameless as you, will I get a lot of treasures?" Yi Xian. Chapter 619. Yi Xian ignored the woman. She was too annoying. However, Zhuojing kept chasing him. "Swordsman, compensate me with a knife." "I don't even have a knife to use." Yi Xian stopped. "You want to kill me?" Zhuojing said seriously, "I don't want to kill you now." Yi Xian asked, "Why?" Zhuojing thought about it and said, "I can't kill you." The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. "So, if you could kill me, you would, wouldn't you?" Zhuojing glanced at Yi Xian. "Don't you think you deserve a beating?" Yi Xian shook his head. He ignored the woman and turned to leave. This woman was too powerful. Yi Xian moved quickly and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. At this time, the woman's voice came from behind, "You can't run. I'm going to Shenwu City to find you." Yi Xian. As the Great Wall's Order Alliance, Monster Clan, and Tang Clan fled, the Kingdom of God's army marched straight in. It was worth mentioning that the Kingdom of God's army didn't massacre or even rob along the way. However, every city and sect had a new master. This time, the Kingdom of God didn't wipe them out. As long as they surrendered, they were not killed. As for those who resisted, there was basically no resistance because the Kingdom of God was too powerful. So powerful that it made people despair. After the Kingdom of God took over many places, they immediately began to reform. At the same time, powerful forces from the Kingdom of God appeared in the 3 desolate worlds. In the Kingdom of God, there were 36 sects and 10 aristocratic families. The top ones were the Confucian Institution, the military school, and the School of Vertical and Horizontal. The Confucian Institution, the military school, and the School of Vertical and Horizontal had their own orthodoxies. In the Kingdom of God, they were very powerful, but even they had to submit to the God Lord of the Kingdom of God. Many disciples of these 3 schools were also serving the kingdom. Now, the Kingdom of God was in conflict, but it was also very united. In particular, the dispatch of troops this time was unanimously agreed by all the forces in the Kingdom of God. Many old monsters from the Divine Kingdom had yet to appear, even though the Divine Nation had entered 3 deserted worlds, the Order Alliance, the Tang Clan, and the Demon Clan had not been completely destroyed. However, they had sent their armies to fight. Everyone knew that the Chaos Verse was truly going to be unified. After Yi Xian left the Great Wall, he directly rode his sword to Ascending Heaven City. Some debts needed to be settled. When he arrived at Heaven Ascension City, there was not a single soul in the city. All of them escaped. Yi Xian frowned. When he entered the city, it was completely empty. There was nothing at all. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. His spiritual consciousness swept across the entire city, and soon, he disappeared from the spot. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived in front of a large hall where a person was sitting. Star Lord. Yi Xian looked at the Star Lord. Waiting for me? The Star Lord nodded. He got up and walked not far from Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and said, Yi Xian, I have to say, you are indeed outstanding. Yi Xian nodded. After knowing you for so long, you finally said something sensible. The Star Lord shook his head. I have to say, coveting this treasure of yours was indeed my biggest mistake. However, I had no other choice. Yi Xian took out a divine crystal and swallowed it. Are you sure you want to talk? I am a straightforward person and I will not beat around the bush. Right now, I have not fully recovered. The Star Lord smiled. Feel free to swallow it. If I am still afraid of fighting you, then I really have lived all these years in vain. Yi Xian nodded. Then I won't be polite. With that, he took out another pile of divine crystals and began to swallow. At this time, an old man holding a sword suddenly appeared not far away. A divine nation expert. Obviously, this divine nation did not intend to let the Star Lord go. Yi Xian looked at the old man holding the sword. Senior, can you let me fight him? If I die, oh no, if I can't win, can you make your move? The old man looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. He looked at the Star Lord and the latter smiled. Sir, since I can't run away, how about you let me fight him? The old man retreated to the side. Obviously, he agreed. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian. Do you know how long I have been in the Tendo realm? Yi Xian shook his head. The Star Lord said, 300 years. I have been trapped in the Tendo realm for 300 years. Yi Xian asked, so you are eyeing my treasure? The Star Lord said softly, Yi Xian, tell me the truth. The reason why you are so monstrous is because of that treasure, right? Yi Xian was a little unhappy. Could it be that other than this treasure, I, Yi Xian, am useless? The Star Lord laughed. I forgot. You still have a very strong point, which is your thick skin. Shameless enough, Yi Xian said calmly, Star Lord, even if you get that treasure, you can't improve. The Star Lord asked, why? Yi Xian said, because this treasure can't help people improve, at least not now. That's right, I obtained some opportunities because of this treasure. But that's because I, Yi Xian, have a strong and unreasonable sword immortal sister. Otherwise, I would have died many times. These were his heartfelt words. If it wasn't for the plain-dressed woman, he would have died many times. But he still did not understand why the plain-dressed woman was so good to him. Was it because he was too handsome? Thinking of this, Yi Xian blushed. Was he too narcissistic? At this moment, the Star Lord suddenly asked, the sword immortal sister you mentioned is the person behind you? Yi Xian nodded, yes. The Star Lord said softly, so strong that she is unreasonable. Yi Xian smiled, Star Lord, we can start. At this moment, he had completely recovered. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian and nodded slightly. Let me see how monstrous you are after becoming a transcendent sword saint. As his voice fell, he slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force quietly gathered in his fist. Yi Xian opened his palm and the executing heaven sword appeared in his palm. The next moment, the power of the earth began to gather towards him at an extremely fast speed. Almost in an instant, the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins within a radius of tens of thousands of miles were all absorbed by him. Not far away, the old man holding the sword glanced at Yi Xian. Great Tao Law. The endless Great Tao Law began to gather towards Yi Xian, and in Yi Xian's hand, the executing heaven sword began to vibrate violently. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian, and the next moment, he suddenly disappeared. Boom! A powerful force suddenly swept towards Yi Xian. The force was so strong that it directly caused the entire city to collapse inch by inch. Yi Xian looked in front of him and said softly, "This sword is for you on behalf of Senior Wu 1 and Senior Yu." As his voice fell, he suddenly leaped forward and slashed with the sword in both hands. Behind him, the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins gathered into his body like a golden dragon, and then poured out along his executing heaven sword. The sword fell. Boom! A silhouette suddenly flew out. It was Yi Xian. Not far away, the old man shook his head. The difference in cultivation level was too great. At this moment, his expression suddenly changed. He looked at the position where the Star Lord was standing not far away, and the space there suddenly began to strangely slice. Chi 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 chi. A series of densely packed cutting sounds rang out. Spatial laceration. The sword-hugging elder narrowed his eyes. This spatial laceration was not an external laceration, but a laceration of spatial attributes. This was extremely terrifying. At that moment, the elder suddenly turned his head to look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. There, a sword in Yi Xian's hands suddenly flew towards Confucius. The next moment, the sword pointed at where the planet lord was. Buzz! A sword cry suddenly shook the heavens and earth. Soul-suppressing sword. Soul-splitting sword. The elder with the sword immediately turned his head to look at the position of the Star Lord. There, the space was trembling. Soon, the space returned to normal. At this moment, the Star Lord appeared in front of Yi Xian and the elder. At this moment, the Star Lord's face was abnormally pale. Not only that, there were more than 10 sword scars around his body. But he was still alive. In the distance, Yi Xian's expression darkened. At this time, Soul's voice sounded in his mind, "Young lord, his soul is too strong, I can't separate it." Yi Xian nodded, "Don't worry, leave the rest to me." As he spoke, he looked at the Star Lord not far away. At this moment, the Star Lord's eyes were slightly closed. His soul would leave his body from time to time, but it would quickly return to his body. In the end, his soul returned to normal. The Star Lord opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian. "That sword of yours is really strange." Yi Xian smiled, "Unfortunately, it's useless against you." The Star Lord shook his head, "If your realm was a little higher, I wouldn't be able to withstand it." As he spoke, he slowly walked towards Yi Xian. "If you don't have any other trump cards, then you might die." Yi Xian smiled, "I still have one trump card." The Star Lord nodded, "Let's try." Yi Xian smiled slightly. The next moment, he took a step forward, and a red glow swept out from his body. Bloodline power. In fact, he didn't really want to use this bloodline power, but at this moment, he had no choice. If he didn't use the bloodline power, he couldn't kill this Star Lord. As for the after effects of this bloodline power, he didn't care so much. Now, he just wanted to kill the person in front of him. As the bloodline power was activated, rays of red light constantly vibrated out from his body. At the same time, the power of the surrounding earth veins once again gathered towards him. Not only that, this time, he directly used the dragon soul force and dragon power. At this moment, his aura skyrocketed to an extremely terrifying level. Especially the bloodline power, the power of this bloodline power was too terrifying. In addition, he was also madly absorbing the surrounding power of space, and the surrounding space began to squeeze towards the Star Lord layer by layer. The Star Lord narrowed his eyes, slowly clenching his fists. Soon, a powerful aura constantly vibrated out from his body, and the surrounding space rippled, extremely terrifying. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi! A ray of red sword light flashed across the field. Not far away, the Star Lord also suddenly disappeared. There was a moment of silence. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly sounded, following which, the entire ascending heaven city began to collapse and be annihilated. At this time, countless flying swords suddenly appeared in the field, crisscrossing, and at the same time, the surrounding space began to cut. Just like this, it continued for about 15 minutes before the surroundings gradually calmed down. Yi Xian stood on the spot, blood constantly flowing out from the corner of his mouth, but very quickly, the blood was absorbed by him. And not far away, the Star Lord's physical body had already been destroyed. But his soul was still there. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "Spending such a great price, just to destroy my physical body? Then do you know that I only need half a quarter of an hour to condense a new physical body?" At this time, not far away, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, a sword light slashed over. Soul-suppressing sword plus soul-setting sword. The Star Lord's face instantly changed. At this moment, he knew why Yi Xian wanted to destroy his physical body at all costs. This sword plus this sword skill, his soul could not block it at all. The Star Lord suddenly laughed out loud, "Good one, Yi Xian." As his voice fell, his soul suddenly exploded. Rumble. Yi Xian was instantly sent flying thousands of feet away, and finally heavily smashed onto the ground. But very quickly, Yi Xian stood up. After the Star Lord's soul self-destructed, he immediately looked at the sword-hugging elder not far away, and then he walked towards the sword-hugging elder with his sword. Killing intent. At this moment, he wanted to kill someone. The sword-hugging elder looked at Yi Xian, and said indifferently, "You better calm down." Yi Xian suddenly roared, "I also want to calm down, but I can't control myself." Ah! As his voice fell, he directly rushed towards the sword-hugging elder. "P.S. Too tired. I want to take a leave. I want to take 2 days to not write, and sleep until I wake up naturally. Is there anyone who can provide for me? Just provide meals." Chapter 620. The old man had an emotionless expression on his face as he watched Yi Xian charge towards him. Needless to say, Yi Xian really was very strong because he was able to kill a Star Lord. However, he wasn't someone that a Star Lord could compare to. He wasn't just a true emperor, he was an extraordinary sword saint as well. Regardless of whether it was in terms of cultivation or the sword Dao, he crushed Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian wanted to stop as well. He really wanted to stop, but his body wasn't under his control. Or it should be said that the killing intent in his mind had suppressed his reason. His bloodline would affect his mind, and it would affect him greatly. He wasn't able to control himself at all. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive in front of the old man, and the old man suddenly attacked. OM. A sword howl tore through the air, and then a ray of light flashed. It was an extremely swift attack. Not too far away. Bang! Yi Xian swiftly drew his sword and slashed as well. But it only took a moment for his figure to be blasted flying along with his sword, and he flew over 1 kilometer away. On the ground, Yi Xian's body twitched for a while. However, he slowly stood up and walked towards the old man holding the sword. He walked very slowly, but the killing intent he emanated didn't weaken at all, and it grew stronger instead. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly while killing intent arose within them. The sword in his hand started to tremble and emanated a light sword howl. Suddenly, a little girl appeared in front of the old man. It was Zhuojing. Zhuojing bowed slightly to the old man. "Greetings, Grandpa Xiangqing." The old man called Xiangqing glanced at Zhuojing, and then his expression gradually eased up. "It's you." Zhuojing grinned. "Grandpa Xiang, give him to me, all right?" Xiangqing gazed at Yi Xian. "Him?" Zhuojing nodded. "Yes." Xiangqing shook his head. "He's dangerous." Zhuojing spoke seriously. "He's crippled now, so he's not a match for me at all." When she spoke up to this point, she hesitated for a moment and said, "He stole my saber in the past. I want to take revenge on him." Xiangqing looked at Zhuojing and said, "If you didn't have those evil thoughts, you would have been on the divine list long ago." Zhuo Jing blinked. Haven't I done it yet? Xiang Qing was speechless. Don't you know it yourself? Zhuo Jing said in a low voice, I thought I was the one. Xiang Qing, at this time, Zhuo Jing said again, it doesn't matter if you go or not. In this god nation, who doesn't know of me, heroine Zhuo? Xiang Qing smiled, I still have things to do, so I won't talk nonsense with you. Remember, this person is dangerous. Be careful. It's best to cripple him first. With that, he turned and disappeared into the horizon. Zhuo Jing quickly said, Grandpa Xiang, don't you want his black Xiaota? A voice came from the distant horizon. I'm a swordsman. My sword is enough. Why do I need anything else? Below, Zhuo Jing looked at the horizon and softly said, Thank goodness I'm not a swordsman. With that, she turned and looked at Yi Xian not far away. At this moment, Yi Xian had already walked a few dozen feet in front of her. Looking at Yi Xian, Zhuo Jing smiled. The next moment, she stepped forward and punched Yi Xian's face. Bang! Yi Xian instantly fell to the ground. At the same time, his face swelled up. Zhuo Jing grabbed Yi Xian's foot and walked into the distance. Soon, she dragged Yi Xian and disappeared at the end of the horizon. At the end of the horizon, Zhuo Jing's strange laughter could be heard from time to time. Order City, at the city gate, a little girl stood quietly. This person was God Nation's sovereign. Behind the little girl were many God Nation's powerhouses. Looking at the Order City, the little girl said softly, We'll settle here for the time being. At this time, Nangongwan suddenly said, Your Majesty, the Order Alliance and Tang clan have fled to the full sky sea. There's no movement from the monster race, and there's no movement from God Martial City. The little girl said softly, Send people to hunt them down. We must kill them all. Nangongwan wanted to say something but stopped. The little girl said, Speak your mind. Nangongwan bowed slightly. Your Majesty, we have occupied 3 deserted worlds. Now is not the time to kill. The little girl said, Continue. Nangongwan said, We need to win the hearts of the people. If we continue to suppress them with iron blood, many people will feel uneasy, especially the forces from the small worlds. Everyone will feel insecure. This is not our original intention. Of course, we cannot let the stubborn forces like the Order Alliance go unchecked. However, if they are willing to surrender, we can let bygones be bygones. Only then will many people not resist stubbornly. The little girl was silent. Nangongwan said again, Your Majesty, conquering the world is easy, but governing it is difficult, especially when the chaotic universe is so vast. Therefore, we must use both carrot and stick. We must use iron blood, but we must also be merciful. The little girl nodded. Yes. Nangongwan relaxed. Then I will go and do it. Speaking of this, she seemed to have thought of something and said, Should we send troops to suppress God Martial City? The little girl shook her head. I will go myself. Saying this, she turned to look at the horizon. I once heard from my master that the patriarch of the sword sect is an incredible person. I want to see him. Nangongwan nodded. Understood. Saying this, she quietly retreated. The little girl suddenly said, Have Elder Lu of the Confucian Institution, Elder Han of the military school, and Elder Wang of the School of Vertical and Horizontal come see me. Behind her, a man quietly retreated. The little girl walked into the city. The streets were deserted. Although there were people around, they were all hiding. The little girl walked to the city lord's palace. At this moment, the entire place was deserted. There was not a single person. The little girl walked to a stone table and sat down. Suddenly, 3 old men appeared in front of her. These 3 were Master Lu Fu of the Confucian Institution, Han Yuzi of the military school, and Wang Jingji of the School of Vertical and Horizontal. The 3 bowed to the little girl. After the 3 bowed, the little girl bowed back. This was respect. The little girl sat down and gestured for them to sit. The three old men sat down. The little girl softly said, "Speak." Master Lu Fu softly said, "We want to establish our orthodoxy in various places." The little girl said, "The world is very large, and it is easy for it to fall into chaos. Do you understand what I mean?" Master Lu Fu smiled. "Of course. Rest assured, we are like this in the Divine Kingdom, and we will do the same here. We will not allow this world to fall into chaos again." The little girl looked at Master Lu Fu. "First there is a country, then there is a home. No matter how you preach, you must remember this." Saying this, she stood up and left. Where they stood, the three looked at each other and smiled. Master Lu Fu suddenly whispered, "Although this god lord of ours is young, her heart is not small." Han Yuzi smiled. "Among the god lords of our divine kingdom, which one is a simple character?" Wang Jingji faintly smiled. "In truth, this isn't a bad thing." Master Lu Fu nodded. "If a god lord isn't strong enough, the primal chaos universe will instantly fall into chaos." Wang Jingji and Han Yuzi nodded. "If this god lord isn't monstrous enough, it can be said that the divine kingdom will instantly fall apart. Once that happens, the entire primal chaos universe will fall into endless chaos." At this time, a guard suddenly appeared in front of the three. The guard bowed slightly. His Majesty said that we still have an enemy we haven't dealt with. Hearing this, the three's expressions became solemn. There is an even stronger enemy that has yet to be dealt with. Somewhere in a dense forest, Zhuo Jing dragged Yi Xian slowly through the forest. Today, Zhuo Jing was especially happy. The smile on her face was like a blooming flower. She finally caught this shameless swordsman. Zhuo Jing dragged Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, she arrived in front of a pool of water. She placed Yi Xian on the ground and began to take off Yi Xian's clothes. Chapter 621. Where's the treasure? Zhuo Jing had stripped Yi Xian naked, but she still could not find Yi Xian's treasure. Looking at the naked Yi Xian in front of her, Zhuo Jing knitted her eyebrows tightly. Somewhat displeased, she lowered her head to look at Yi Xian. At the moment, Yi Xian seemed to have fallen into a coma. Zhuo Jing kicked Yi Xian's butt lightly. "Shameless swordsman, where's your treasure?" Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing that Yi Xian had no reaction, Zhuo Jing kicked him again. However, there was still no reaction. Zhuo Jing frowned slightly. She squatted down and patted Yi Xian's face lightly. "Shameless swordsman, wake up." However, Yi Xian still did not move. Zhuo Jing said softly, "He's probably injured." She pondered for a moment before adding, "Looks like I'll have to treat his injuries first." Treat his injuries. Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian away. About half an hour later, Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian to a mountain range. There was a sect from God Nation on this mountain range. The Medicine King sect. The Medicine King sect was not the most powerful force in God Nation. However, this sect was a little special. This was because this sect specialized in refining elixirs. These elixirs were good stuff. They could be used to treat injuries, nourish the soul, and nourish the body. Better elixirs could even help a person improve. Some special elixirs could even change a person's physique and achieve the effect of marrow cleansing. Because of this, the Medicine King sect had a special status in God Nation. There were too many powerful forces that needed to purchase elixirs from them. In addition, the sect leader of the Medicine King sect held a position in the God Nation's palace. Therefore, although the Medicine King sect's combat power was not strong, its influence was huge. Most people did not dare to provoke them. Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian towards the top of the mountain. Along the way, many women passed by. However, when they saw Yi Xian, their faces blushed and they hurriedly walked away. Soon, the Medicine King sect was shaken. The disciples of the Medicine King sect were mostly female. Because of this, Zhuo Jing had brought along a naked Yi Xian and strutted around the mountain, causing quite a stir. At this moment, a woman suddenly walked in front of Zhuo Jing. She glanced at Zhuo Jing and was a little displeased. Heroine Zhuo, who is this person you brought along? Zhuo Jing said, a shameless swordsman. The woman glanced at Yi Xian and blushed. You're a swordsman. Then why didn't you help him get dressed? Zhuo Jing shook her head. Troublesome. After that, she continued to drag Yi Xian up the mountain. As if she had thought of something, she turned to look at the woman. Is lunatic Kai here? The woman replied, Senior Sister Kai is planting spirit herbs at the top of the mountain. Zhuo Jing nodded and dragged Yi Xian up the mountain. At this moment, the woman followed beside Zhuo Jing. If you don't help him get dressed, he'll be so embarrassed when he wakes up. Zhuo Jing said seriously, he's very thick-skinned. He won't care at all. The woman was speechless. At this moment, Zhuo Jing added, I only know how to strip. The woman was speechless. After a while, Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian to the top of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, many people were building a palace. On the other side, a woman was planting spirit herbs in a courtyard. The woman looked to be in her 20s and wore a simple cotton dress. She had a small scythe hanging from her waist and was currently using a small hoe to dig a hole. Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian behind the woman and said, Lunatic Kai, help me save this person. The woman did not even turn her head. No. Zhuo Jing was expressionless. This person has a lot of treasures on him. The woman turned around. When she saw Yi Xian, she was slightly stunned. This is the Shenwu city lord, Yi Xian? Zhuo Jing looked at Lunatic Kai in surprise. You know him? Lunatic Kai walked in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. I heard that he has a fifth-dimensional treasure on him. Zhuo Jing quickly nodded. Yes, he has a lot of treasures on him. However, I don't know where he hid them. I searched for a long time but couldn't find him. Lunatic Kai squatted in front of Yi Xian and placed her right hand on Yi Xian's abdomen. After a while, she said softly, his internal organs are damaged and the blood vessels in his body are still boiling. Bury him. Zhuo Jing hesitated and said, I think he can still be saved. Let's try. Lunatic Kai looked at Zhuo Jing. I need money to save him. Zhuo Jing hurriedly pointed at Yi Xian. He doesn't have anything but money. After saving him, we'll divide him. Zhuo Jing thought for a while and said, okay. After saying that, she took out a white jade bottle and poured out a thumb-sized medicinal pill. The medicinal pill was pure white and emitted a sweet fragrance. Lunatic Kai fed the medicinal pill to Yi Xian. Soon, a light green energy suddenly spread out from Yi Xian's body. After a while, Yi Xian's body started to tremble. Zhuo Jing quickly asked, what's wrong? Lunatic Kai touched Yi Xian's body and said, his blood swallowed my medicinal pill. Zhuo Jing replied with an, oh, and said, continue feeding. Lunatic Kai looked at Zhuo Jing. It's very expensive. Zhuo Jing said seriously, he's the city lord of Shenwu City. Do you think he lacks money? Moreover, he has a lot of treasures on him. Lunatic Kai thought for a moment and continued feeding Yi Xian. Just like that, around an hour later, Yi Xian's injury started to slowly recover. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and they were completely blood red. Zhuo Jing's eyelids twitched when she saw this. How terrifying! Meanwhile, Lunatic Kai suddenly rubbed a silver needle between Yi Xian's brows. Zhuo Jing looked at Lunatic Kai. What are you doing? Lunatic Kai said in a low voice, his killing intent is too strong. It's because of his bloodline. This needle of mine has temporarily suppressed his bloodline. Zhuo Jing asked, can he wake up? Lunatic Kai said softly, it's up to him. Right at this moment, Shaoling suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Zhuo Jing and Lunatic Noodle were stunned when they saw Shaoling Shaoling glanced at the two women, and then looked at Yi Xian. When Yi Xian was injured, the prison pagoda was affected and closed, so she couldn't come out at all. But now, after Lunatic Kai fed Yi Xian a pill, Yi Xian's body recovered a little, and the prison pagoda was opened again. Lunatic Kai suddenly said, "She's the spirit of the source." The spirit of the source. Zhuo Jing's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she looked at Xiao Ling, with surprise. She really is the spirit of the source. Xiao Ling, glanced at the two women, and her face was expressionless. You're actually humans. How rare. The two women were speechless. Xiao Ling looked at Yi Xian, and then she took out many spirit fruits to feed Yi Xian. Seeing these spirit fruits, Lunatic Kai's eyes lit up. Holy spirit fruit, mystical spirit grass, red dragon fruit. Xiao Ling ignored the two women, and continued to feed Yi Xian spirit fruits. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and it quickly trembled, as if it was angry. Xiao Ling glanced at the prison pagoda. He didn't do it on purpose, so why are you angry? The prison pagoda trembled, as if it was saying something. Xiao Ling ignored it, and she continued to feed Yi Xian spirit fruits. At the side, Zhuo Jing and Lunatic Kai's eyes fell on the prison pagoda. A fifth-dimensional treasure. Zhuo Jing's eyes lit up, and Lunatic Kai was a little curious. Regarding this fifth-dimensional treasure, many people in the divine nation also knew about it. One had to know that this treasure was not only ranked first here, it was also ranked first in the entire divine nation. In God Nation, there was also a God weapon list, which was created by the Heavenly Secret Sect, and the number one treasure was this fifth-dimensional treasure. This treasure surpassed countless treasures in God Nation. But now, there were two more treasures on this God weapon list. Executing Heaven's Sword. And this Executing Heaven's Sword was ranked third. In other words, on the God weapon list, Yi Xian alone occupied two treasures. At this moment, Zhuo Jing suddenly said, "Why don't you follow me?" Prison pagoda, Xiao Ling looked at Zhuo Jing. "It won't follow you." Zhuo Jing was a little confused. Why? Xiao Ling said, "Because it's afraid of death." Prison pagoda, Zhuo Jing blinked her eyes. At this time, the red in Yi Xian's eyes gradually receded, and his consciousness also slowly recovered. After a while, Yi Xian completely recovered his consciousness, and he looked at Xiao Ling, softly saying, "Not dead?" Beside him, Zhuo Jing hurriedly said, "Shameless swordsman, it was me who saved you." Lunatic Kai said, "Me too." Yi Xian slowly sat up, and at this time, his lower body felt cold. He looked down and was immediately stunned. Not wearing anything? Yi Xian looked at Zhuo Jing. "Where are my clothes?" Zhuo Jing hurriedly shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian, at this time, Zhuo Jing suddenly said, "Swordsman, I saved you, how are you going to repay me?" Yi Xian took out a set of clothes and put it on, then looked at Zhuo Jing. "Why don't I repay you with my body?" Zhuo Jing glared at Yi Xian. "Shameless swordsman, be a man. How can you be so shameless? I'm your savior, you know. If not for me, you would have been killed by Grandpa Xiang Qing." Yi Xian said seriously, "Thank you." These words were from the bottom of her heart. He knew that if not for this woman in front of him, he might really have died. With that said, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a storage ring appeared in his hand. He handed the storage ring to Zhuo Jing. "There are 5 million divinity crystals in there, is that enough?" Zhuo Jing took a look at the storage ring. Then she looked at the prison tower not far away. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "I can't give it to you. It's true. If it's with you, it might even harm you." Lunatic Kai also said, "He's right." Zhuo Jing thought for a moment, then said, "Then pay me back with a saber." "I don't have a saber to use anymore." Yi Xian said, 5 million divinity crystals, can I buy a Dao realm saber?" Zhuo Jing nodded, "Yes. But I can only buy a normal one. I want a very, very good one, is that okay?" Yi Xian asked, "Where can I find one?" Zhuo Jing hurriedly said, "I know a place with a saber on the divine weapon list, I've liked it for a long time. Come, I'll take you to steal it." With that said, she grabbed Yi Xian and ran. Lunatic Kai. P.S. I slept for an entire afternoon yesterday. It felt very comfortable. When I woke up this morning, I finally didn't feel dizzy and sore. Many of the authors you know are slow to update. In fact, most of the reasons are because they can't handle the intense writing. Because we are all slowly growing up, and we no longer have the energy we had when we were young. Sometimes, after writing for an entire day, we feel like our heads don't belong to us anymore. Very few people would be able to experience such a feeling. I am grateful to all the readers who have supported me along the way. I will continue to work hard and update, and I will try to update as much as possible. Keep updating, and steadily update every month. Are there any readers with questions? If there are, I have a physical book here, we can chat privately. Chapter 622. Steal. Yi Xian was at a loss for words. Suddenly, Zhuo Jing stopped and turned to look at Lunatic Kai. Do you want to go with me? Lunatic Kai shook his head and looked at Yi Xian. I fed you 16 elixirs just now. That's exactly 5 million divinity crystals. Yi Xian jumped to his feet. 5 million divinity crystals? Are you sure? Lunatic Kai said calmly, those are immortal grade elixirs. Do you know what an immortal grade elixir is? Yi Xian said in a low voice, I don't think it's that expensive. Lunatic Kai sneered. Not that expensive? Let me tell you, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't sell it to you even if you offered 10 million. Yi Xian looked at Zhuo Jing, who nodded. That elixir is very expensive. Yi Xian nodded and pointed his finger. The spatial ring with 5 million divinity crystals flew into Lunatic Kai's hand. Lunatic Kai glanced at Yi Xian. Don't feel uncomfortable. Go ask around for the price of the Holy Spirit elixir. Then, she turned and left. At this time, Xiaoling suddenly shouted angrily, what kind of lousy elixir is this? Is it expensive? She waved her hand and a large pile of spiritual fruits appeared in front of Lunatic Kai. Lunatic Kai's eyelids twitched when he saw the pile of spiritual fruits. These are all supreme-grade spiritual fruits. If they are used to make elixirs, the quality of the elixirs will be greatly improved. At this time, Yi Xian walked up to Xiaoling and rubbed Xiaoling's little head. You can't say that. Xiaoling looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. No matter what elixir it is, it saved my life. We should remember and be grateful to those who help us, not bite the hand that feeds us. Do you understand? Xiaoling blinked and nodded. I don't understand. Yi Xian was speechless. I don't understand why you're nodding. He gently rubbed Xiaoling's little head, then looked at Lunatic Kai. Miss, I will remember your kindness for saving my life. With that, he pointed at the spirit fruits on the ground. A small token of my appreciation, please accept it. Lunatic Kai glanced at Yi Xian and kept the spiritual fruits. You and I are even. Yi Xian nodded and left with Zhuo Jing. On the way, Zhuo Jing suddenly said, Swordsman, Lunatic Kai is still a good person. Yi Xian nodded. I'm not angry. Zhuo Jing looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. She and you saved my life. Not to mention 5 million, even 50 million wouldn't be too much. Your life-saving grace is greater than the heavens. Zhuo Jing said seriously, really? Yi Xian nodded. Zhuo Jing hurriedly said, then you must help me get that saber. Yi Xian said seriously, are you really going to steal it? Zhuo Jing shook her head. It's not stealing, it's taking. Yi Xian was speechless. Just like that, Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian to the God Nation. The Saber Sect. The Saber Sect was very famous in the God Nation, second only to the Confucian school of military and school of vertical and horizontal. At this moment, there were very few people in the Saber Sect because most of the disciples had gone to the northern wasteland realm. There was a new Saber Sect. Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian to an underground place. As soon as they entered, a wave of heat hit them. Yi Xian frowned. What was this place? Zhuo Jing continued to bring Yi Xian down. After about an hour, Zhuo Jing brought Yi Xian to a fiery red well. Looking at the well, Zhuo Jing was a little excited. Look! Yi Xian walked to the fire well and bent down to look. About 5 feet below, there was a fiery red saber floating. The saber was as red as a pool of blood. It was 2 fingers wide and there was a groove on the back of the saber. Inside it, a small red lotus slowly floated from top to bottom. And the entire saber exuded a fiery killing intent. And around the saber, there were 4 chains. The 4 chains locked the saber tightly. Good saber. This was Yi Xian's first impression. Beside Yi Xian, Zhuo Jing said excitedly, "Swordsman, do you know what saber this is?" Yi Xian shook his head. Zhuo Jing said, "This is called the Hellfire Saber. It contains the Hellfire of the Red Lotus, which is ranked 7th on the Spirit ranking. This saber is ranked 5th on the Divine Weapon ranking. It's very powerful." Yi Xian looked at Zhuo Jing. He opened his palm and the Executing Heaven sword appeared. Yi Xian asked, "Is it better than my sword?" Zhuo Jing glared at Yi Xian. "Are you trying to piss me off on purpose?" Yi Xian roared with laughter. The saber below was very strong indeed. If he were to slash it with his sword, he was confident that he could shatter it with a single strike. Up until now, besides the World Prison Pagoda, he hadn't found anything that could resist the Executing Heaven sword. Meanwhile, Zhuo Jing said, "Swordsman, help me cut the chains that lock it." Yi Xian looked at the 4 chains and hesitated for a moment before he said, "This saber belongs to your saber sect, right?" Zhuo Jing nodded. "Yes, it belongs to my saber sect." Yi Xian asked, "Then why did they lock it?" Zhuo Jing said angrily, "Who knows? In any case, I'm going to let it out." Yi Xian was slightly hesitant. "Miss Zhuo, I think that you should ask the seniors of your saber sect. Because there's definitely a reason why they locked it there." Zhuo Jing blinked and said, "They have nothing better to do. Swordsman, help me cut those chains, and I'll take responsibility for everything." Yi Xian was speechless. Zhuo Jing continued, "If you're unwilling, then let me use your sword. Because the chains below are protected by a formation, and ordinary weapons aren't able to harm it at all." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he looked down the well. In the next moment, a ray of light shot into the well, and it didn't take long for the chains that locked the karmic flame blade to suddenly transform into countless pieces. Bang! The karmic flame blade charged out of the well along with a wave of flames. It didn't stop there, and it continued charging towards the ground. Zhuo Jing hurriedly said, "Stop it." Yi Xian opened his palm, and the Executing Heaven sword suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot into the air. It didn't take long for the Executing Heaven sword to block the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade didn't stop there, and it slashed towards the Executing Heaven sword instead. Yi Xian shook his head. Isn't the karmic flame blade looking for trouble? As expected, the karmic flame blade had just slashed towards the Executing Heaven sword when it was blasted away. At this moment, there were already cracks on the karmic flame blade. Zhuo Jing's expression changed when she saw this, and she hurriedly said, "Don't hurt it." As she spoke, she leaped up and arrived in front of the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade was trembling violently in fear. The Executing Heaven sword floated to Zhuo Jing's side, and she hurriedly grabbed it. "Don't be angry. Let me talk to it." As she spoke, she flew over to the karmic flame blade and grabbed it. But in the next moment, her right hand loosened, and her hand was mangled. Zhuo Jing was stunned when she witnessed this scene. The karmic flame blade intended to flee, but the Executing Heaven sword quickly blocked its path. The karmic flame blade was speechless. Yi Xian walked over to Zhuo Jing and said in a low voice, "It must submit to you so that it won't hurt you." Zhuo Jing looked at the karmic flame blade. "Will you submit to me?" The karmic flame blade trembled violently as if it was furious. Obviously, it wasn't willing to submit. Zhuo Jing was expressionless. Kill it. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian was speechless. The executing heaven sword actually slashed towards the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade instantly trembled in fear when it saw this. In the next moment, it flew over to Zhuo Jing and let out a low hum. Zhuo Jing was expressionless. Didn't you refuse to follow me? Go fight it one-on-one. The karmic flame blade started to tremble violently. A moment later, Zhuo Jing grabbed the karmic flame blade. At this moment, the karmic flame blade didn't hurt her. Yi Xian was speechless. Zhuo Jing glanced at the blade in her hand with undisguised fondness in her eyes. At this moment, the bottom of the well suddenly trembled violently. Yi Xian's expression changed. He bent over to look and saw that the lava in the well was suddenly boiling. At the same time, terrifying heat waves kept spewing out from the ground. Yi Xian's expression darkened. Needless to say, something must have happened. Without hesitation, Yi Xian disappeared on the spot with Zhuo Jing. As soon as the two of them arrived on the surface, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble and countless amounts of lava spewed out. Yi Xian looked at Zhuo Jing. Zhuo Jing's expression was very innocent. It has nothing to do with me, right? Yi Xian said indifferently, what do you think? At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Zhuo Jing. Zhuo Jing's expression changed when she saw this old man. She hurriedly retreated behind Yi Xian. The old man looked at Zhuo Jing coldly. How did you get that blade out? Zhuo Jing lowered her head slightly and didn't speak. The old man said angrily, do you know what that blade is used for? Zhuo Jing glanced at the old man and said softly, I don't. The old man said angrily, nonsense. That blade is something that suppresses the earth spirit energy here. If you take it away now, then the earth spirit energy here will erupt completely, and everything in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers will be transformed into ashes. Earth spirit energy? Yi Xian was stunned. He remembered that you had said that the energy of the earth could absorb earth spirit energy. Moreover, the earth spirit energy was much more abundant than the energy of the earth veins. The reason he hadn't absorbed earth spirit energy in the past was because earth spirit energy couldn't be found everywhere. Yi Xian hadn't expected that he would actually encounter it here. Zhuo Jing, who stood behind Yi Xian, was instantly stunned when she heard the old man. She hadn't expected that the matter would be so serious. Everything in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers will be transformed into ashes. Doesn't that mean that the Saber sect will be destroyed by the energy of the earth veins? Zhuo Jing was on the verge of crying when she thought up to here. The old man still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, let me handle this matter. The old man looked at Yi Xian, City Lord Yi, you're not welcome here. He naturally knew Yi Xian. Yi Xian had a certain reputation in God Nation now. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, I'm also partly responsible for this matter. I, Yi Xian, am not the kind of person who won't take responsibility for what he does. Since this matter is related to me, I'll take responsibility until the end. The old man looked at Yi Xian coldly. How are you going to take responsibility? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I have an item that can absorb the earth spirit energy. However, it's extremely dangerous. At this point, he sighed softly, no matter how dangerous it is, I can only try. As he spoke, the great Tao Law appeared between his eyebrows. Soon, the earth spirit energy below began to gather towards him. In an instant, Yi Xian was enveloped in magma. Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment, his face suddenly contorted. It's so painful. However, he was laughing inside. It's so King comfortable. Zhuo Jing was stunned when she saw Yi Xian's painful expression. Soon, her tears flowed out and she kept repeating in her heart, I'm sorry. Chapter 623. The old man from the Saber sect was stunned. Yi Xian was willing to sacrifice himself for the Saber sect? He was dumbfounded. Not far away, Yi Xian was frantically absorbing the Earth's spiritual power. After the Earth's spiritual power was absorbed by him, it was absorbed by the Great Tao Law and gathered in the Great Tao Law. And when the power of the Earth passed through his body also benefited greatly. Due to the Great Tao Law, the Earth's spiritual power did not cause any harm to his body. The Great Tao Law restrained all energy and power that came from the Earth. About 2 hours later, he had absorbed all of the Earth string energy. After that, he lay down on the ground, his face twisted in pain. I'm in so much pain. Zhuo Jing quickly supported him. Are you all right? Her voice was trembling. Yi Xian's body twitched as if he was having an epileptic seizure. Zhuo Jing quickly looked at the old man, her face full of anxiety. Big Grandpa, save him. The old man glanced at Yi Xian. This kid is a little strange. Zhuo Jing said angrily, what's strange about him? He saved our Saber sect. Big Grandpa, how can you be so cold-hearted? I won't call you Grandpa anymore. Old man, I'll call you Old Man. The old man was speechless. He glanced at Yi Xian on the ground and tapped with his finger. A white jade bottle landed in front of Yi Xian. Zhuo Jing hurriedly opened the white jade bottle and fed Yi Xian all the elixirs inside. After about an hour, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. He was a little dazed. Am I still alive? Zhuo Jing quickly said, yes, you're still alive. Yi Xian took a deep breath. You're still alive. Zhuo Jing lowered her head slightly, shameless. Swordsman, I'm sorry. Yi Xian looked at Zhuo Jing and sighed softly. Why are you being so polite? Isn't it normal for friends to help each other? Zhuo Jing looked at Yi Xian. Do you see me as a friend? Yi Xian nodded. Yeah. Zhuo Jing suddenly burst into tears. I just wanted to rob you. I'm really bad. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly said, little girl, come over here. Zhuo Jing did not respond. She was still crying. The old man said in a low voice, come here. Zhuo Jing was a little dissatisfied. I'm still sad. The elder shook his head and sighed. Then, he looked at Yi Xian and said, City Lord Yi, as far as I know, His Majesty will personally go to your Shenwu city soon. If you don't return, I'm afraid your Shenwu city will be flattened. Yi Xian's expression changed when he heard this. He had almost forgotten about this. That little girl from the Divine Kingdom said that she wanted Divine Martial City to surrender. Yi Xian immediately stood up and looked at Zhuo Jing. Miss Zhuo Jing, I have to go back first. See you later. After that, he rode his sword and disappeared into the horizon. Zhuo Jing was stunned. He's leaving just like that? Not far away, the old man said in a low voice, little girl, stay away from this kid. He doesn't look like a decent person. Zhuo Jing looked at the old man with dissatisfaction. Grandpa, how can you say that about me? You're really too bad. After that, she hugged the karmic fire saber and left. The old man was speechless. In the clouds, Yi Xian rode his sword back to Shenwu City. At this moment, his heart was heavy. That little girl from the Divine Kingdom wanted Shenwu City to surrender. Once it surrendered, the entire Shenwu City would have to listen to her orders. He did not like this. However, he was very clear that the current Shenwu City could not resist that little girl. What should he do? How frustrating. Yi Xian thought for a long time. In the end, he decided to reason with her. He must reason with her. Thinking of this, Yi Xian sped up. More and more forces from the Divine Kingdom entered the 3 wasteland worlds, and these forces divided the 3 wasteland worlds. However, there was no massacre. Of course, the interests of many local forces were greatly affected. But now, because of the Divine Kingdom's strength, there was no resistance. As for the Lawful Alliance, the Divine Tao Army, the Tang Clan, and the Demon Clan, they all fled to the Sky Sea. The Sky Sea was boundless and had many islands. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. In addition, most of the Divine Kingdom's army was stationed in various places. Therefore, the Lawful Alliance and other forces had not been completely eradicated. Apart from that, there was another anomaly. That was Shenwu City. Currently, this Shenwu City had not surrendered to the Divine Kingdom, and the Divine Kingdom did not send any experts to attack Shenwu City. However, everyone knew that, could Shenwu City continue to maintain its transcendent status? Shenwu City. After Yi Xian returned to Shenwu City, he immediately summoned Enlanxiu and the others. Inside the main hall, the experts of Wuyuan and the Sword Sect were all present. Everyone's expression was somewhat solemn. The Divine Kingdom's strength had greatly exceeded their expectations. Under such circumstances, it was simply impossible for Shenwu City to oppose the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Everyone can speak your opinions." Below, a Wuyuan expert suddenly said, "We can't beat them." Yi Xian smiled. "Indeed, I can't beat him." Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian stood up and said softly, "If you believe me, then let me resolve this matter." Everyone nodded. Towards Yi Xian, they had unreserved trust. By then, Yi Xian was the only one he could trust. Soon, everyone dispersed, leaving only Yi Xian and Enlanxiu in the hall. Enlanxiu walked to Yi Xian's side and said softly, "What do you plan to do?" Yi Xian looked outside the distant hall and said with a smile, "What else can I do?" Enlanxiu said in a low voice, "The difference between our strength and theirs is too great." Yi Xian nodded, "I know." Enlanxiu glanced at Yi Xian, "You make the decision." Finished speaking, she turned around and left. Only Yi Xian was left in the hall. Yi Xian stayed in the hall for a full 2 hours, and during these 2 hours, no one knew what Yi Xian did. Outside the hall, Yi Xian stood quietly. And at this time, a little girl arrived at Shenwu City's gate. This person was the Divine Kingdom's Divine Lord. The little girl wore a black dress today with a long sword hanging on her waist. Her black hair was tied up with a purple ribbon, looking especially cool. 1,000 feet behind the little girl stood 10 black-clothed people. The 10 black-clothed people wore black gauze masks on their heads and long swords hung on their waists, making it impossible to see their depths. And in front of these 10 people stood a blindfolded man. The man looked to be around 30 years old, wore black clothes, and held a sheathed long sword in his hand. In the distance, the little girl walked towards the city. The blindfolded man and the 10 people were about to follow, but the little girl raised her right hand, and the 11 immediately left. It didn't take long for the little girl to arrive in the city. The streets of the city were still very bustling because very few people recognized the little girl. The little girl walked forward slowly, and all along the way, people on both sides of the street would look at her from time to time. The little girl ignored everyone's gazes and continued walking forward. Right at this moment, a man suddenly walked in front of the little girl. He looked at the little girl and laughed mischievously. "Little girl, it seems like you have just arrived at the Divine Martial City?" The little girl nodded. The man's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly said, "There are many bad people in Shenwu City. You have to be careful." The little girl nodded, "All right." The man was about to speak when the little girl suddenly said, "It's not easy to live. Let's go." The man was slightly stunned. In the next moment, he took a deep look at the little girl, and then he hurriedly turned around and left. The little girl said softly, "Investigate. If he's done too many bad things, then don't let him live." In the dark, some people quietly left. The little girl continued forward, and in a short while, she arrived at the foot of the Sword Sect's mountain, and there stood a man. This man was Yi Xian. The girl looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian chuckled, "Welcome to the Sword Sect." The little girl looked at Yi Xian, "The lives and deaths of countless people in Shenwu City depend on a single thought of yours." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he walked in front of the little girl and smiled, "Let's not talk about these unpleasant things for now. Come, I've made a few dishes, and we can talk while eating." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand, and a jade table appeared in front of them. There were over a dozen dishes on the table. P.S. Explosion on the 15th. When they realized this, many people silently read and silently voted. Very few people came out to talk. Come out and say something. Let me know that I'm not writing a book alone. Otherwise, I'll feel so lonely every day. It's good to talk. Chapter 624. The girl didn't refuse. Instead, she sat down in front of Yi Xian and glanced at the dishes on the table. You made this? Yi Xian nodded. I made it. The girl nodded. Just as she was about to eat, Xiaoling suddenly appeared next to Yi Xian. She glanced at the girl, then at Yi Xian. I want to eat too. Yi Xian laughed. All right, let's eat together. Xiaoling grinned, then picked up her chopsticks. Yi Xian suddenly said, let the guests start first. Xiaoling said, oh. She looked at the girl, implying, hurry up and do it. The girl glanced at Xiaoling a special essence spirit with limitless possibilities in the future. Xiaoling asked, do you mean very powerful? The girl nodded. Little Ling hurriedly asked, how powerful will it be? The girl looked at Xiaoling If you follow me, you will become very, very powerful. If you follow him, your achievements will be limited. Yi Xian smiled, but didn't say anything. He was a bit surprised. He hadn't expected that the girl would value Xiaoling so much. Xiaoling shook her head. Not with you. The girl nodded. She didn't ask why. She wouldn't force anything. Just like Yi Xian's supreme treasure. If that treasure didn't choose to follow her, she wouldn't force it. If it's mine, it must be mine. If it's not, I won't accept it even if you give it to me. The girl picked up her chopsticks, picked up a small mushroom, and placed it in her mouth. After a moment, she nodded. Not bad. Xiaoling hurriedly picked up her chopsticks as well. Yi Xian's cooking was quite good. After a while, the little girl said, in the chaotic universe, aside from my divine kingdom, no other power can transcend. The school of Confucianism can't, the school of military strategy can't, the school of vertical and horizontal can't, and your Shenwu city can't either. Then she glanced at Yi Xian. The chaotic universe must be unified. It must be unified in a real sense. Yi Xian said in a low voice, you're a swordsman, and I can sense that you don't have much desire for power. Why do you want to unify the chaos verse? Isn't unifying the chaos verse a good thing? Yi Xian smiled. I'm just curious. The girl put down her chopsticks. Responsibility. The responsibility of the divine kingdom is to unify the chaos verse. Since I'm the God Master, this is my responsibility. Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. Do you know why the 3 deserted worlds on your side still lost? Yi Xian said solemnly, our strength is inferior to yours. The little girl shook her head. Not exactly. The real reason is that you don't have a sense of belonging. The 3 deserted worlds each have their own way of doing things, each with their own thoughts. On your side, benefits are paramount. There is no sense of family or country. In everyone's mind, there is only benefit. For benefit, you can betray everyone else. You only fight for yourselves. Once something goes against you, you will immediately change your way of thinking. You will become a pile of loose sand and even turn against the other side. Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. We fight for benefits, but also for our beliefs. You, on the other hand, have no beliefs. Yi Xian was silent. Just as the little girl said, the people on their side all had their own way of doing things. They had no sense of family or country. Many of them didn't even know what they were fighting for. Of course, most of them were fighting for themselves. All of them wanted to reap benefits. Under these circumstances, How could they face the divine kingdom? Although the Shenwu city was united, the difference in strength was too great. The little girl stood up and looked at Yi Xian. You are a swordsman. You have pride and you are not afraid of the divine kingdom. However, have you ever thought that you are the city lord of the Shenwu city? With a single thought, you can decide the life and death of countless people in the city. As she spoke, she walked in front of Yi Xian and lightly tapped Yi Xian's chest with her finger. A swordsman's sword would rather be broken than bent. However, this does not mean that a swordsman can be a selfish person. If you are alone, you can be like this. However, you are not alone. Do you understand? Yi Xian smiled. Actually, you can completely crush the Shenwu city. Why are you so patient with me and telling me this? The little girl didn't answer. She sat down and said, You can tell me your answer now. Yi Xian thought about it and said, I still want to fight for it. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. At this time, 11 people appeared behind her. Just these 11 people, no one in the Shenwu city could stop them. At this time, Yi Xian said again, How about this? I will fight with you first. If I can't win, the Shenwu city will follow your will. If I win, the Shenwu city will be like before, unrestricted by anyone. Of course, we will only stay in the Shenwu city and will not expand our forces outside. How about it? The little girl looked at Yi Xian. You don't want to give up, so you want to fight, but you don't want to start a war with my god nation with the holy martial arts city. So, you want to fight my god nation in your own name? Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said, This request of yours is beneficial to you, but not to me. So, I also want to make a request. Yi Xian said, Speak. The little girl said, No matter what the final outcome is, you have to help me with one thing. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian nodded, Sure. The little girl nodded, Bring me to the sword sect first. Yi Xian stood up, put away the table, and said, Please. Just like that, the little girl came to the sword sect's hall under Yi Xian's lead. In front of the sword sect's hall, there was a statue. It was the statue of the green-robed man. The little girl came before the statue of the green-robed man. She looked at the green-robed man in silence. Yi Xian didn't disturb her. The little girl looked at the statue for a long time. Finally, she said softly, Why didn't his soul or avatar appear during the Great Wall War? Yi Xian smiled bitterly, They have been used up. The little girl nodded, That's a pity. Then, she turned to Yi Xian, Do you want to fight one-on-one, or call someone? Yi Xian smiled, One-on-one first. The little girl nodded, I'll call someone. Yi Xian looked straight at the little girl, I'll fight you one-on-one. The little girl looked at Yi Xian, but didn't say anything. One-on-one. Yi Xian knew that the little girl was strong, very, very strong. Even Mu Nanji's avatar couldn't do anything to her, so one could imagine how strong she was. Moreover, the little girl before him was a sword goddess. It could be said that he was deeply afraid of her, or rather, slightly afraid. Afraid. He, Yi Xian, was a human, not a god. Naturally, he would be afraid. However, he never ran away from his fear and his heart. The more afraid he was, the more he wanted to challenge. He could lose, but he couldn't be afraid. The little girl said softly, You surprised me. Yi Xian smiled, Surprised about what? The little girl looked at Yi Xian, No one has dared to challenge me since I was 10 years old in the kingdom of God. Yi Xian said with a smile, I rarely challenge others, but I really want to have a fight with you. A real fight without any external objects. The little girl nodded, Sure. Yi Xian said, Can I let the sword sect disciples watch? The little girl looked at Yi Xian, Sure. Soon, all the disciples of the sword sect arrived. The little girl curled her right hand, and a wooden stick suddenly flew into her hand from 30 m away. Yi Xian was instantly put in a difficult position. He had wanted to take an ordinary sword, but the other party had taken a wooden stick. No matter how thick his skin was, he would be too embarrassed to take a sword. So, he waved his right hand, and the wooden stick fell into his hand. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. In my world, the sword Dao is divided into 3 realms. The first is the wood sword realm, the second is the divine sword realm, and the third is the wood sword realm. Every sword represented a realm of the sword Dao. You should be in the divine sword realm now, so you can take your executing heaven sword. Yi Xian shook his head. I want to try a wooden sword. The little girl nodded. Make your move. Yi Xian said, please enlighten me. With that, he suddenly vanished. A cold light appeared in front of the little girl. The little girl stabbed out with her sword. It was a very calm stab. When the stab collided with the cold light instantly disappeared. Yi Xian was about to attack again, but at this moment, 3 little girls suddenly appeared beside him. In the next moment, 3 swords stabbed at his forehead, the back of his neck, and his abdomen. All of them were fatal. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly, and he swept with his sword. However, this strike missed, and in the next moment, a sword had already pierced his chest. The sword went half an inch deep. Blood splattered. And almost at the same time, Yi Xian stabbed at the little girl. He instinctively chose to exchange life for life. However, the moment he attacked, the little girl had already returned to her original spot. Yi Xian looked at the little girl, who said softly, "You're too slow." As her voice fell, she suddenly turned illusory. Not far away, Yi Xian's expression changed. He was about to attack, but the little girl had already returned to her original spot. And at this moment, there were 10 sword scars on his body. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. The naked eye can never compare to the mind. The speed of using the hand to attack will never be faster than the heart. With the heart as the sword, and the sword as the heart, one can achieve extreme speed. Yi Xian said softly, "Is it the heart sword?" The little girl nodded. "Give it a try." Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. After a moment, he suddenly disappeared. This time, Yi Xian's speed was a little faster than before, but it was not obvious. In the distance, the little girl suddenly raised her sword. Pang! Yi Xian returned to his original spot. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. Clear the heart of distractions, 1 sword to kill immortals. In the distance, Yi Xian was silent. Gap. He really felt the gap. This little girl's strength, even an emperor expert couldn't compare to her. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. In this world, there would always be some outstanding people who were so outstanding that people couldn't help but sigh. Why was there such a big gap between people? Hard work was important. However, talent was often more important. Besides talent, one's birth was also more important. The scariest thing was that people with good birth, with talent that made others despair, would work harder than ordinary people. Yi Xian looked at the little girl. "I can't beat you." Admit defeat. What people were most afraid of was not losing, but not being able to accept it. At this moment, he regretting that he didn't learn sword Dao from the plain dress girl. And now, even if he wanted to learn, he couldn't find anyone. He could only rely on himself to slowly explore. And when Yi Xian said, "I can't beat you," he suddenly felt his whole body relax like never before. Yi Xian, didn't want to lose to anyone of the younger generation, and as for this little girl, he didn't want to lose to her, because from Qingqing until now, he had never lost to anyone of the younger generation. However, he didn't know that this was an obsession. Many things, the more you want, the more you can't, the more you want to lose. Admit defeat. It was to let go of the obsession. Once the obsession was let go, the heart would naturally be light. The heart was light, the sword was fast. Yi Xian suddenly looked up at the little girl. "Another round?" Chapter 625. Let's fight again. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's voice was very calm as he looked at the little girl. However, the little girl shook her head. You have some enlightenment, and you will transform. Unfortunately, you are still not my match. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and the wooden branch slowly flew to the side. At this moment, the wooden branch suddenly flew in front of the little girl, trembling slightly. The wooden branch originally had no spirit, but the little girl just gave it a trace of spirit. The sword lives because of the person. The little girl gently stroked the branch and said softly, "You are not suitable to follow me. Stay here and let the sword intent slowly nourish you. If there is an opportunity in the future, you will have your own good fortune." With that, she turned and left. As if thinking of something, she suddenly stopped and said softly, "You have lost. My people will take over Shenwu City." With that, she walked into the distance. But soon, she stopped again and turned to look at Yi Xian. "You want Shenwu City to be free?" Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said, "If you do one thing for me, I can let Shenwu City be free for 10 years. 10 years? Yi Xian asked, "What is it?" If the little girl was willing to give him 10 years, it was undoubtedly a good thing for him. 10 years was enough for him to do many things. At this moment, the little girl said, "You will know in the future. Come with me." Yi Xian, just like that, Yi Xian followed the little girl and left Shenwu City. On a giant golden dragon, the little girl stood on the dragon's head with her hands behind her back and her eyes slightly closed. Beside the little girl was Yi Xian, and behind them were the 11 black-robed powerhouses. Yi Xian couldn't help but ask, "What do you need me to do?" Intuition told him that it might not be a good thing. There were so many powerhouses in God Nation, but she just had to ask him. This was definitely not a normal matter. The little girl opened her eyes and said softly, "You will know soon." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Your people will not interfere with Shenwu City, right?" The little girl nodded. "I won't. However, your Shenwu City's Wuyuan and Sword Sect are not allowed to expand." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry, we just want to develop well now." The little girl nodded and slowly closed her eyes. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. At this moment, he kept thinking about what the little girl had said to him. With the heart as the sword, with the sword as the heart. Not long ago, when he was trapped by Yu, he comprehended the Tao and became a sage. At that time, he understood that he had to look straight into his heart. When he was fighting the little girl, he had an obsession in his heart. He did not want to lose, especially not to a swordsman of the same generation. The more he did not want to lose, the more indignant he felt. The moment he admitted defeat, he realized that his entire body had relaxed. This feeling was extremely comfortable, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He knew that the change in his mental state had caused his sword Tao to change as well. As for what the changes were, he did not know. The path of sword Tao was to cultivate the heart, and this heart might be cultivated for a lifetime. Every stage and every event would give him a new and different understanding. Perhaps, this was life. At this moment, he really missed the girl in the plain dress. If she was still here, many of his doubts about sword Tao would definitely be easily solved. But now, he could only rely on himself to comprehend everything. If he comprehended correctly, it would be fine, but if he comprehended incorrectly, at this moment, the little girl suddenly said, "We're here." Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and looked down. Order City. The golden dragon landed, and Yi Xian and the little girl got off the dragon. The little girl led Yi Xian towards the city lord mansion. On the way, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "I still don't know how to address you." The little girl said, "Little Seven." Yi Xian was stunned, "Little Seven?" Little Seven nodded, "Is there a problem?" Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "This name is a little too simple. There must be some meaning to it, right?" Little Seven calmly said, "Just call me Little Seven." Yi Xian. Not long later, Little Seven brought Yi Xian to the city lord mansion. At this moment, there were 7 people there. He knew 2 of them. They were the 2 sword-hugging elders behind Little Seven. These 2 were Xiang Qing and Xiang Yu. Among them, he had met Xiang Qing once in Ascending Heaven City. Apart from these two, there were 3 other elders. They were Master Lu Fu from the Confucian faction, Han Yuzi from the military school, and Wang Jingji from the school of vertical and horizontal. There was also a middle-aged man holding a blade. He wore a white robe and his eyes were closed, as if he was in deep thought. Seeing Yi Xian, everyone was a little surprised. The little girl found a place to sit, and the others all sat down. The little girl said, "Did you find its location?" Xiang Qing nodded, "I know its approximate location." Little Seven asked, "How strong is it?" Xiang Qing said solemnly, "Strength unknown." Little Seven nodded, "Let the Celestial Arcanum sect continue to investigate." Xiang Qing said, "They are doing their best to investigate. However, the other party is hiding very well. I'm afraid it will take some time to find its exact location." Little Seven was silent for a moment and then said, "How are the Order Alliance, Tang Clan, and the Monster Race?" Xiang Qing said, "They have fled to Sky Sea. That area is too big and complicated. Moreover, they are hiding in small groups, so we can't wipe them all out in a short time. However, once our side stabilizes, the people here can go over together." Little Seven said softly, "Is there anyone willing to submit?" Xiang Qing said solemnly, "Yes, but very few." Little Seven nodded, "Let Nangong handle this. If the Order Alliance, Monster Race, and Tang Clan are willing to submit, I can let bygones be bygones. If they are stubborn and send the guards to Sky Sea, leave none alive." Xiang Qing nodded, "Understood." At this moment, Little Seven looked at Yi Xian, "You might be curious why I invited him here." Xiang Qing nodded. Little Seven said, "I have decided to let him participate in our mission." When they heard this, all of them were stunned. The middle-aged man who was hugging the blade opened his eyes and glanced at Yi Xian before closing them. Xiang Qing hesitated for a moment and then said, "Your Majesty, he is really too weak." "Yi Xian," Little Seven said, "he will be useful." Xiang Qing nodded, "I will listen to your Majesty's orders." Little Seven said, "All of you can leave first." Xiang Qing and the others turned around and left. At this moment, Yi Xian said, "What are all of you going to do?" Little Seven said, "You will know in the future. Follow me." After saying this, she walked off into the distance. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. He had boarded a pirate ship. In just a while, Little Seven brought Yi Xian to a training field. Yi Xian was delighted. "You want to spar with me?" He had gained a lot from sparring with Little Seven. Little Seven shook her head. She opened her palm and 3 sword-wielding mechanical puppets appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was shocked. "You want me to spar with them?" Little Seven nodded. "I used them to cultivate in the past. You can try." Yi Xian looked at the 3 mechanical puppets. In the next moment, he suddenly disappeared. Pretty much at the same time, the 3 mechanical puppets suddenly attacked. Chi chi chi. Along with 3 ripping sounds, Yi Xian instantly returned to his original position. The moment he stopped, the 3 swords suddenly stabbed at him from 3 different angles, fast, accurate, vicious. That was Yi Xian's first thought. Yi Xian was about to take the sword when the little girl suddenly said, "You are not allowed to use your executing heaven sword." Yi Xian, just like that, Yi Xian was tortured. In the boundless starry sky, a giant carried a tombstone that was thousands of feet long and slowly moved forward. Every step the giant took caused the entire starry sky to tremble violently. The giant kept walking in one direction for who knew how long. On this day, the giant suddenly stopped and looked into the distance with deep eyes. On his shoulder, the tombstone suddenly trembled. On the tombstone, 2 large blood-red words became more and more enchanting. These 2 blood-red words were, Yi Xian. After a moment, the giant continued forward. In an unknown place, there was a small island that floated in the starry sky. On the island, there was a palace. The entire island was surrounded by immortal chi, like a paradise. In the palace, a woman in white sat quietly. In the woman's hand, there was a scroll, and on her left, there were 2 tortoiseshell. This person was the former patriarch of the Tang clan, Mu Nanji. Suddenly, Mu Nanji frowned. She looked up at the horizon and pinched her fingers. After a moment, her expression changed. Is she crazy? After saying that, she suddenly got up and left. At this moment, a voice came from the palace. Where is Master going? Back to the chaotic universe. In a certain city, in front of a blacksmith, a man with a scraggly beard was lying on a chair, a broken sword hanging from his waist. The man was lying on the chair, drunk. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly trembled, and a voice came from within. After a moment, the man suddenly opened his eyes. Sword light flashed in his eyes. How dare you? After saying that, he suddenly got up and flew into the sky on his sword. At this moment, a woman from the blacksmith chased after him. Where are you going? A voice came from the horizon. Go back. The woman said angrily, Jian Nanshan, didn't you say that you don't care about the sword sect anymore? In the horizon, the voice said, it has nothing to do with the sword sect. Wait for me to come back. In front of a cliff, a middle-aged man sat cross-legged. The middle-aged man was covered in weeds. No one knew how long the middle-aged man had been sitting here. Suddenly, the space in front of the middle-aged man slightly trembled. After a moment, the middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Someone is more arrogant than me, Zhou Yafu? After saying that, he got up and left. In a galaxy, a man walked in the sky. The man had shoulder-length hair, and there was an unsheathed blade and a sheathed sword hanging from his waist. At this moment, the space in front of the man suddenly trembled. The man stopped. After a long time, the man said softly, Tu Tendo, interesting. After saying that, he turned around and left. In a room in the City of Order, Shao Qi sat quietly. In front of her, there was a sword. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. Your Majesty, I have found the exact whereabouts of the Tendo. However, it seems to be calling someone. Shao Qi nodded slightly. Got it. P.S. Please save your monthly tickets. I am going to explode on the 15th. Chapter 626. On the training field. Yi Xian was still sparring with the 3 mechanical puppets. He had to say that sparring with the 3 mechanical puppets was very rewarding. And every time after sparring, he would sit down and meditate. Enlightenment. At this moment, Yi Xian truly understood the importance of the word enlightenment, especially as a swordsman. Just like that, he trained in this training field for a full half a month. In this half a month, he had greatly improved in all aspects. Especially in terms of strength and speed. Now that he did not use Dragon Soul and Dragon Power, his speed and strength were several times stronger than before. Especially after he used Heart as Sword. Sword with Heart. And that Shao Qi would come every once in a while, and every time she came, the mechanical puppet would become much stronger. On this day, Yi Xian, who was training, suddenly stopped. He turned around and took a look, then left. Outside Order City. Yi Xian came to a dense forest. In the dense forest, he saw a familiar person. Tang Qing. Seeing Tang Qing, Yi Xian was a little surprised. Miss Tang? Tang Qing nodded. Let's talk somewhere else. With that, she left with Yi Xian. Not long later, Yi Xian and Tang Qing came to the depths of the forest. On the way, Tang Qing suddenly asked, You surrendered to God Nation? Yi Xian smiled, No. Tang Qing turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled lightly. Miss Tang Qing came to find me. There should be something, right? Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian said softly, Miss Tang Qing, I discovered something. Do you know what it is? Tang Qing shook her head. Yi Xian said, Back then, I fought with you against God Nation, but unfortunately, we were never united. Especially that Star Lord, he wanted me dead time and time again, but other than the southern sect martial masters, no one stood on my side. I think that the Demon King also wants me dead. Perfected Shu also wants me dead. Even your Tang clan's patriarch, Tang Yen, probably thinks the same. Right? Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian asked again, fight against the god race? In fact, the few of you have never thought about the common people in this world. You only think about your own interests. As he spoke, Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. He softly said, my abilities are limited, and I can't be the savior of the world. As long as I, my friends, and the divine martial city are safe, that's all that matters. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, after God's nation took over your territories, they didn't slaughter you. But I dare to guarantee that if your clans enter the God nation will definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. Do you believe me? Hearing this, Tang Qing sighed softly. Because she knew that what Yi Xian said was true. If they entered the God nation, the people of the God nation would be plunged into misery and suffering. After the divine nation entered the 3 deserted worlds, it did not return. Robbery, this was something she had not expected. Not only that, the policies implemented by the divine kingdom in some places were very good. Moreover, with the suppression of the divine kingdom, there were fewer conflicts in many places. Of course, the Order Alliance, the Tang clan, and the monster race must have suffered heavy losses. Everything was gone. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Tang, why are you looking for me? Tang Qing glanced at Yi Xian and said, can't I look for you for no reason? Yi Xian smiled and said, of course not. I am also very happy to see Miss Tang Qing. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and said, happy about what? Yi Xian grinned and said, of course I am happy to be with a beauty. Tang Qing shook her head and said, Yi Xian, if you are not interested in a girl, don't seduce her. Yi Xian, at this time, Tang Qing suddenly said seriously, I heard that you are with that girl, so I came to look for you. Tell me, why are you following her? Yi Xian said in a low voice, I promised to do something for her. Tang Qing asked, this is why she did not cause trouble for Shenwu City? Yi Xian nodded and said. Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian looked at Tang Qing and said, what is it? Tang Qing shook her head and said, you must leave her. Yi Xian was a little puzzled and said, why? Tang Qing said in a low voice, something big might happen in Shenwu City recently. Yi Xian asked, what big thing? Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian smiled and said, if Miss Tang Qing is not willing to say, I will not force you. Tang Qing glanced at Yi Xian and said, I do not know the specifics. I only know that the Order Alliance, my Tang clan, and the monster race are preparing to counterattack at any time. Yi Xian frowned and said, counterattack? Tang Qing nodded and said. Yi Xian asked, what do you use to counterattack? Tang Qing said softly, I do not know. However, since they dare to choose to counterattack, they must be confident. Therefore, there might be some changes in Shenwu City. Therefore, it is best that you leave her. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Miss Tang Qing. Tang Qing turned around and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought about it and said, if you need anything, remember to inform me. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and said, take care of yourself. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian kept silent for a long while and then he turned around and left. After returning to Order City, he noticed that Seven was at the training ground. Seven said, she is the Lady Tang from the Tang clan? Yi Xian's face sunk as he was noticed. Seven said, I won't hurt her. Yi Xian looked at Seven, Miss Seven, what do you want me to help you with? Seven said, you will know soon. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, Miss Seven, you know that I am a coward and I can't be frightened. Seven looked at Yi Xian, you can go back on your word. Go back on his word? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He wanted to go back on his word, but he had his principles. Since he promised her, then he had to do it. Of course, if it was something that went against his principles, then he wouldn't do it. As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking about, 7 said, "Don't worry, I won't ask you to do anything like kill people." When he heard that, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't killing people, then it shouldn't be a big deal. 7 said, "Follow me." After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian followed. On the way, 7 suddenly asked, "How is your cultivation?" Yi Xian said, "I have improved by leaps and bounds." One had to say that his cultivation and sword technique had improved by leaps and bounds with the 3 mechanical puppets, including his flying swords. The thing he wanted to do the most was to fight 7 again. 7 nodded slightly when she heard Yi Xian, "That's good." As soon as she finished speaking, she brought Yi Xian to a courtyard, and he saw Xiang Qing and the others there. This time, there were 4 more mysterious people wearing bamboo hats and black robes. When he saw them, Yi Xian's expression instantly became solemn. Danger. That was the first thing he felt when he saw them. How many experts are there in God's kingdom? 7 glanced at them and said, "Where are the border suppression blades?" Xiang Qing bowed slightly, "They will be here soon." 7 nodded, "Are all of you ready?" Xiang Qing said, "Everything is ready, just 2 more people." At this moment, a woman walked in. It was Nangong Wan. Nangong Wan glanced at Yi Xian, and then she walked in front of 7 and bowed slightly, "Your Majesty, everything is ready." 7 nodded slightly, and then she looked at Yi Xian, "He will be joining us." Xiang Qing and the others glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. 7 looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said solemnly, "Miss 7, what are you going to do? You should at least let me be mentally prepared." He was getting more and more panicked. 7 looked at Yi Xian, "Nothing much, I am just going to kill the Tendo." Kill the Tendo. Yi Xian was stunned, too. Kill the Tendo? 7 nodded. Yi Xian was shocked, "Didn't you say that you won't kill?" 7 was calm, "The Tendo isn't human." Yi Xian said, Chapter 627. Kill the Tendo. One had to say that Yi Xian was stunned. He knew about the heavenly Tao. It had almost killed him in the past. However, he had never thought about defying the heavens. Killing the Tendo was defying the heavens. Yi Xian said solemnly, "Miss 7, can I ask you why you want to kill the Tendo?" 7 looked at Yi Xian, "It shouldn't exist." Yi Xian didn't understand, "Why?" 7 smiled, "Do you know why there is so much war here?" Yi Xian shook his head. 7 said, "It is because the Tendo doesn't want the living beings of this universe to be united." Yi Xian still didn't understand, "Why?" Nangong Wan said, "Because if everyone is united, it won't be good for its rule. Have you noticed that the laws of this world are all set by it? Moreover, it controls all the sources of heaven and earth." All the sources of heaven and earth. Yi Xian kept silent. He didn't forget that when he tried to save Shaoling, he tried to take the Tendo source and was nearly killed by the Tendo. However, he didn't hate the Tendo at all. That was because it belonged to them. Just at this moment, Nangong Wan suddenly said, "You definitely think that the Tendo source belongs to it, right?" Yi Xian asked, "Isn't it?" Nangong Wan smiled, "Of course not. The Tendo source is something from the chaotic universe. When the chaotic universe was born, it had these sources. The source is controlled by the Tendo and it doesn't allow people to absorb it. Or rather, it only allows people it values to absorb it." Yi Xian kept silent. Nangong Wan looked at Yi Xian, "Do you know why my god country is so strong?" Because in the past, the martial gods slaughtered Tendo and gained control of Tendo's origin. Because of this, countless people in my divine nation can enjoy Tendo's origin. Therefore, we are much stronger than you. On your side, you are still under the control of the Tendo, so many of your people can't become emperors. Why? Because it is restricting your strength. Only in this way can it enslave you forever. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said in a low voice, Miss Nangong, now that you mention it, I realize that this Tendo is quite bad. If it wasn't for its restrictions, then I, Yi Xian, would have become an emperor a long time ago. Tendo. Nangong Wan's expression froze. She shook her head and said, don't put the blame on Tendo. You have your own problems. Yi Xian was speechless. At the side, Seven suddenly said, do you understand now? Yi Xian said solemnly, Miss Seven, I am not familiar with the Tendo, so I don't know if it is good or bad. What I want to say is that I can't beat it. You want me to help you kill the Tendo? Are you asking me to be cannon fodder? Everyone, Seven was slightly stunned. A moment later, she shook her head, I won't let you be cannon fodder and I won't let you attack. You will know when the time comes. Yi Xian thought about it and then nodded, okay. He seemed to have thought of something and said quickly, Miss Seven, I want to complain about Nangong Wan. Nangong Wan glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Seven looked at Yi Xian and said, what do you want to complain about? Yi Xian said solemnly, that day when I went to your god country, she brought me around. She said that she wouldn't attack guests, but she got tens of thousands of soldiers to beat me up and even wanted to kill me. She went back on her words and damaged the god country's reputation. I suggest stripping her of her Kingdom Knight title. Nangong Wan was expressionless. Seven looked at Yi Xian, you. Yi Xian, a moment later, Seven said softly, City Lord Yi, you are an interesting person, just that your skin is a little thick. Nangong Wan looked at Yi Xian, not only is he thick, he has reached the realm of shamelessness. Yi Xian wanted to say something but Seven suddenly said, I will accompany you to practice the sword. Yi Xian was delighted, okay, let's go. After saying that, he turned around and left. Seven also walked out. In the field, Xiang Qing sighed, I wonder why His Majesty sent this fellow here. Nangong Wan said softly, His Majesty must have a reason. Moreover, Yi Xian isn't useless. Xiang Qing nodded, that's true. If he stays in front of the Tendo for a period of time, the Tendo will probably collapse. Everyone in the surroundings smiled when they heard this. Martial arts field. Yi Xian and Seven stood there quietly. Seven looked at Yi Xian, draw your sword. Yi Xian nodded. In the next moment, he tapped his feet and floated out. Seven closed her eyes and stabbed out. Pung! Along with an explosion, Yi Xian instantly returned to his original position. At this moment, a flying sword suddenly slashed in front of Seven. Seven's expression didn't change as she held the sword in her right hand and flicked it. Chi! The flying sword changed its position and flew to the right. But in the next moment, another flying sword appeared in front of her silently. Seven tilted her body slightly and perfectly dodged the flying sword. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her and slashed down. The sword was as fast as lightning. His current sword speed was much, much faster than before. Just as Yi Xian slashed down with his sword, a sword suddenly pierced the tip of his sword. In an instant, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. This was because he realized that the power in his sword had been completely dissolved. Yi Xian stopped and looked at Shao Qi. The latter said softly, everyone has their flaws. If we can target their flaws, we will be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Yi Xian said solemnly, one sword to break all techniques? Seven nodded, however, it is extremely difficult to break all techniques with one sword. Yi Xian asked, even you can't do it? Seven looked at Yi Xian, I am saying that it is difficult for you. For me, it isn't difficult. Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines. Damn, Shaoqi walked towards Yi Xian, you have a good foundation, and your flying sword is barely passable. Especially your sword will and your belief in the way of the sword, it's something I've never seen before. Unfortunately, your learning is a little mixed, and even a little crooked, which greatly reduces your strength. Your sword path can be simpler. Yi Xian asked right away, how can it be simpler? 7 opened her palm and a sword appeared in her hand. What is this? Yi Xian said solemnly, a sword. 7 nodded, it is a sword. That is simple. Yi Xian kept silent for a moment before saying, you are saying that when I use the sword, I mix in too many things? A weird expression flashed in 7's eyes. You aren't that stupid. Yi Xian, 7 said, you have too many external objects. Although they are really strong, it makes your sword impure. A pure sword is even sharper. So, you have to separate your external objects from your sword. Yi Xian asked, can I merge them? 7 thought about it and said, how do you want to merge them? Yi Xian opened his palm. The Tao Law appeared in his palm. This is the Grand Tao Law. Can it be merged with my sword path? 7 took a look at the Grand Tao Law and nodded, yes. Yi Xian was delighted and asked right away, how? 7 said, can you lend it to me? Yi Xian nodded and passed the Great Tao Law to Shao Qi. Shao Qi took a look at the Great Tao Law and said softly, the power of the Earth Spirit is gathered here. As she said that, she looked towards Yi Xian. To merge, you have to control them completely. Do you know how to use Earth Spirit power? Yi Xian shook his head. Just at that moment, the Grand Tao Law in 7's hand shook and in the next moment, a golden sword appeared in front of her. A sword formed from Earth Spirit power. The ground around started to shake and large amounts of Earth Spirit power gathered towards the sword. Pretty much instantly, all the Earth Spirit power in the entire Order City gathered into the sword. 7 passed the sword to Yi Xian. Yi Xian took it and looked at 7 in confusion. 7 said, when you slash out, the power is Grand Tao Law and it is a one-time use. Yi Xian kept silent. 7 said, you have to understand what is yours. The sword is yours. If you want to merge, you have to reach a realm where everything can be a sword. Your sword is the core. Be it Grand Tao Law or other external objects, they can only be strengthened by external objects. As she said that, she took the Halran Gaia from Yi Xian's hand and said, in my hands, it is a sword first and then Grand Tao Law. Yi Xian kept silent for a moment and then nodded, I understand. 7 said, what you need to do now is to be simple, to make your sword simple. If your body is strong enough, these external objects will make you stronger. But if you completely rely on the power of these external objects, you will become weaker and weaker. Yi Xian asked, how do I make it simpler? 7 said, don't rely on your random things and be a pure swordsman. Yi Xian kept silent. 7 said, you can't bear to? Yi Xian kept silent. 7 said, when you hesitate, deep in your heart, you are already infatuated with these external objects. Although they are strong enough, they are only temporary. Swordsman, having a sword is enough. Having a sword was enough. Yi Xian said softly, I understand. After saying that, he kept the Grand Tao Law. Only the sword. 7 nodded. She was about to say something when Nangong Wan came to her side and said, Your Majesty, they are here. 7 said, did you miss anything? Nangong Wan thought about it for a moment and then shook her head, no, everything has been arranged. 7 nodded and then she looked towards Yi Xian, let's go. Yi Xian said solemnly, to Tendo. 7 nodded. Yi Xian nodded, let's go. To Tendo. He didn't know what 7 wanted him to do, but he knew that she definitely wasn't asking him to help fight. An existence like Tendo was definitely not something he could fight now. Roughly an hour later, a giant golden dragon flew out from the Order City and then towards the depths of the starry sky. P.S. Can I apply for leave? I have been a little arrogant recently and want to head out for a day. Chapter 628. Misty Sky Ocean. On a small island, Tang Yen stood quietly. He looked up at the horizon with a solemn expression. At this moment, the Demon King and Spiritual Master Chu appeared. Spiritual Master Chu said in a low voice, "That little girl has already gone with her men." Tang Yen said, "What are their chances of winning?" Spiritual Master Chu shook his head, "This divine nation is also unfathomable." Unfathomable. Divine nation's strength had exceeded all of their expectations. At this moment, Spiritual Master Chu sneered, "However, I think she's dreaming if she wants to kill a Tendo." Tendo. Tang Yen nodded. Those who had never encountered a Tendo would never know how terrifying a Tendo was. At this moment, the Demon King suddenly said that Yi Xian also went. Yi Xian. Hearing these two words, Spiritual Master Chu's face immediately turned cold. "That traitor. We should have killed him." The Demon King shook his head, "Let's not talk about him. Let's talk about the Order Alliance." Order Alliance. Hearing this, the atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. The Star Lord died in battle, and now the Order Alliance has a leader, but his strength is too low compared to them. At this moment, devouring the Order Alliance is the best opportunity. At this moment, Tang Yen suddenly said, "Let's put this aside for now." Spiritual Master Chu nodded, "Let's wait for Divine Nation's results first." The Demon King suddenly said, "What if she succeeds?" Spiritual Master Chu sneered, "Is that possible? That's a Tendo we're talking about." Tang Yen said softly, "It won't be that simple. Let's wait and see." The Demon King nodded, "Let's wait and see. Let's see if that little girl can defy the heavens." In the distant horizon, a golden dragon spread its wings and soared. The colossal golden dragon's body was so huge that it practically blotted out the sky. On the golden dragon, Shao Qi stood on the dragon's head. Behind her were Xiang Qing and Xiang Yu. Not far to the right were Confucian institution's Master Lu Fu, military school's Han Yuzi, and Wang Jingji. Not far to the left of Xiang Qing and Yu was a middle-aged man holding a saber. Defense saber. The number one figure on the divine list 20 years ago. Apart from these people, there was also a black-clothed man with his eyes covered. The black-clothed man also held a long saber in his right hand. Yen Dao. It was as famous as the Guanyin saber and came from the same lineage. Apart from them, there was also a man holding a spear. The man looked to be in his 30s, dressed in white and wearing an iron mask. Yu Tsangxing. This person had already reached the realm of spear god at the age of 21. Of course, even a heaven-defying genius would pale in comparison to Shao Qi. At the tail of the dragon, there was a woman in her 20s, with a slender figure and a long black staff in her hands. Number 1 on the divine list. Yuan Yi. He was currently ranked first on the divine list. Something worth mentioning was that when the previous Lord God was choosing his successor, there were 3 people at that time, and Yuan Yi was one of them. In the end, everyone knew the result. Shao Qi had become the Divine Kingdom's divine lord. Standing among this group of people, Yi Xian suddenly felt that he was a little weak. Soon, the dragon entered the starry sky. Yi Xian was a little bored. He came to Yuan Yi's side and sized her up, then waved his hand, "Hi." Yuan Yi opened her eyes and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled, "Let's get to know each other. I'm Yi Xian." Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian, "What's up?" Yi Xian nodded. She sat next to Yuan Yi and asked, "Miss Yuan Yi, I heard that you're ranked first on the divine list. I heard that you are number 1 on the god list. I have a question. What is my ranking in your god nation?" Yuan Yi glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian said again, "I think if I go all out, should be able to rank in the top 3, right?" Yuan Yi still did not speak. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Yi, "Miss Yuan Yi, I think you're a divine sorcerer. Do you know any ancient secret techniques?" Speaking of this, he was a little excited. "I've sparred with some divine sorcerers. Their ancient secret techniques are very interesting. You know them too, right?" Yuan Yi was silent. Yi Xian asked again, "I want to learn these ancient secret techniques too. With a wave of my hand, I can summon wind, clouds, thunder, and lightning. It looks very cool. Yuan Yi suddenly said, "Shut up." Yi Xian's expression froze. Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. "Are we very close?" Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. "We're strangers the first time, but friends the second time." Yuan Yi was silent for a moment, then said, "City Lord Yi, what exactly do you want?" Yi Xian said, "I'm just chatting. I don't mean anything else." Yuan Yi said, "I need to meditate. I can't chat." Yi Xian nodded. "All right, I won't disturb you anymore." After saying that, he turned around and left. But very quickly, he stopped and turned to look at Yuan Yi. "Miss Yuan Yi, do you think I can become a divine sorcerer?" Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. "Let's talk somewhere else." Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This woman wanted to hit him. A moment later, Yi Xian came to Seven's side. He was about to say something when Seven suddenly said, "Nangong, chat with him." Yi Xian. 2 hours later, the giant dragon entered the depths of space while they were still within the chaotic universe. Beside Nangong Wan, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Miss Nangong, I won't hold it against you for wanting to kill me in the past." Nangong Wan looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "It seems like I have to thank City Lord Yi." Yi Xian looked into the depths of space and said softly, "Miss Nangong, I am curious about something. God Nation is so strong, but has anyone left the chaotic universe?" Nangong Wan was silent for a moment, then nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "What world is outside the chaotic universe?" Nangong Wan said softly, "What other world can it be? A world like ours. It's also a dangerous world." Yi Xian said solemnly, "A dangerous world? How dangerous?" Nangong Wan smiled. "City Lord Yi, do you want to go out and have a look?" Yi Xian nodded, "A little." Nangong Wan shook her head. "You are too weak. You will die if you go out." Yi Xian looked into the depths of space, feeling a little lost. Weak. After coming into contact with God Nation, he realized that he was really too weak. There were too many strong people in this world. After a moment, Yi Xian asked again, "How strong is the Tendo?" Hearing this, Nangong Wan's expression gradually became solemn. "Very strong." Yi Xian asked, "How strong is very strong?" Nangong Wan glanced at Yi Xian. "You will know when we fight." "Slaughter the Tendo." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, the golden dragon suddenly sped up. Yi Xian looked up and saw that they had already arrived in the depths of space. About half an hour later, the golden dragon suddenly stopped, and above them, a huge eye suddenly condensed. The huge eye looked down at Yi Xian and the others, its eyes indifferent. Yi Xian looked at the huge eye. "Tendo?" Nangong Wan did not answer. In the distance, Shaoqi looked at the Guandao, who nodded slightly, and the next moment, the Guandao shot up into the sky. In the starry sky, the huge eye suddenly shot out 2 black lightning bolts. Wherever the lightning passed, space turned into nothingness. At this moment, the Guandao in the sky suddenly drew its blade and slashed. Chi! With this slash, the 2 lightning bolts instantly turned into nothingness, but the Guandao did not stop. It turned into a blade light and slashed at the huge eye. There was a moment of silence. Boom! The entire starry sky suddenly trembled, and then the huge eye slowly turned illusory, while the Guandao returned to the golden dragon. Yi Xian looked at the Guandao with a solemn expression. This person is so strong. Soon, the huge eye in the sky disappeared completely. At this time, Shaoqi lightly stomped his right foot forward. The huge dragon soared forward, disappearing into the depths of the starry sky. About an hour later, the dragon stopped, and not far from them, there was a door. Above the door, there was a small black word, Dao. Seeing this door, everyone's expression gradually became solemn. Shaoqi looked at the door, and just as she was about to speak, a voice came from inside. "Genius from Divine Nation, come in and have a seat." Obviously, this was referring to Shaoqi. Before Xiaoqi could speak, Nangongwan suddenly said, "No." Xiang Qing also said solemnly, "Your Majesty, don't underestimate the enemy." Xiaoqi said softly, "It can't kill me." After saying that, she walked towards the door. As if thinking of something, she suddenly stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. "You come in with me." Yi Xian, everyone looked at Yi Xian, their eyes filled with confusion. Yi Xian thought about it, then nodded, "Okay." After saying that, she walked through the door with Xiaoqi. Inside the door, there was another world. On a small island. Yi Xian and Xiaoqi appeared on a small island. The island was not big, and the water around it was so clear that the bottom could be seen. Above them, there was a blue sky and white clouds. And not far in front of them, there was a woman sitting. She looked to be in her 20s, wearing a white dress. Her hair was white, and even her eyebrows were white. At this moment, the woman in white was looking at Yi Xian and Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi and Yi Xian walked over. In front of the woman, there was a tea table, and she made a gesture of invitation. Xiaoqi sat down, and Yi Xian did the same. Yi Xian's eyes were on the white-haired woman, and he was really shocked. "So, this was Tendo," the woman in white sized up Xiaoqi and smiled. "You are even stronger than Wu Anning, and you are more of a monster than her." Xiaoqi looked at her. "You have two choices, do you want to hear them?" The woman in white smiled, "Yes." Xiaoqi nodded. "First, leave the chaotic universe and never come back. Second, I will kill you and make you disappear from the world." Yi Xian, the woman in white, shook her head and smiled. "Little girl, I have to admit that you are a monster. However, if you want to kill me, it doesn't seem to be a simple matter." Xiaoqi looked at the woman in white. "You choose the second, right?" The woman in white smiled. "You have two choices too, do you want to hear them?" Xiaoqi nodded. "Speak." The woman in white looked at Xiaoqi. "You can manage the world below, but you can't touch anything about me." Xiaoqi asked, "What about the second?" The woman in white smiled. "I will kill you. I will wipe out your god country." Xiaoqi nodded. "I choose the second." The moment she said that, the entire area became silent. One could even hear a pin drop. Chapter 629. The second one. As soon as Xiaoqi said this, Yi Xian knew that there was no way to resolve this matter peacefully. The white-haired woman wasn't surprised. She smiled. "I'm a bit curious. Are you really going to kill me for the sake of the people down there, or for yourself?" Xiaoqi looked at the white-haired woman. "For myself, and for the sake of everyone behind me." The white-haired woman laughed. "But have you ever thought about how my death would affect the Chaos Verse? I am the last Tendo of the Chaos Verse." "Tendo?" Xiaoqi shook her head. "You gave yourself that title." The white-haired woman narrowed her eyes. She didn't say anything. Xiaoqi continued, "There is no such thing as a Tendo in this universe. You are just a spirit, one of the more powerful spirits in the Chaos Verse. As for you, you call yourself a Tendo who stands above all living beings and views them as ants. If the people of this universe want to obtain the prime essences of this universe, they must submit to you and be enslaved by you. Without you, this universe will be a better place." The white-haired woman laughed. "Then do you know that if I hadn't controlled the prime essences, given your greed as a human's, the prime essences would have been wiped out long ago. At that time, those who came before would enjoy it, while those who came after would suffer. Do you understand?" Xiaoqi shook her head. "You didn't do it for the sake of the Chaos Verse. You did it for yourself." The white-haired woman said, "I did it for myself. But do you know what would have happened to the Chaos Verse if I hadn't suppressed it?" Xiaoqi said softly, "Do we need to thank you?" The white-haired woman shook her head. "I just wanted to tell you that I didn't enslave the living beings of this universe. I took over the prime essences of the Chaos Verse, but I didn't take everything for myself. In addition, because of my control, there have been very few emperors in the Chaos Verse. You should know what will happen if there are too many of them. Yi Xian suddenly asked, what will happen? The white-haired woman glanced at Yi Xian. Often, the more powerful a person is, the more selfish and greedy they become. If there are too many great emperors, the source energy will be absorbed by them and they might even be able to control it. When she spoke up to hear, she glanced at Seven and smiled. If I die, then the quintessence will be under her control. At that time, she can give it to whoever she wants. The reason why the divine nations were getting stronger and stronger was because they had absorbed all the origin of the Eastern Wasteland domain. Now, nearly 90% of the Eastern Wasteland domain's origin has disappeared. Seven said softly, source belongs to this universe and not one person. As she spoke, she stood up. Since you don't choose to leave, then make your move. With that, Xiang Qing and the others appeared behind Shao Qi. The white-haired lady smiled. They are all Emperor Realm. At this point, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian. What I don't understand is why did you call this guy here? Yi Xian was speechless. Seven said calmly, is he weak? The white-haired woman sized up Yi Xian. Weak? Yi Xian said in a low voice, I'm not that weak, am I? The white-haired lady smiled, at least for now. However, you surprised me, because that pagoda actually recognized you as its master. Yi Xian asked, you recognize it? The white-haired lady shook her head, no, I only came into contact with it once. As she spoke, she opened her right hand and a fiery lotus suddenly appeared. Fire. Not far away, Nangong Wan frowned. Holy fiery lotus. Yi Xian looked at Nangong Wan and the latter explained, Holy fiery lotus, the first divine fire in the entire chaotic universe, comparable to a peak emperor. At this time, a crystal blue water droplet suddenly appeared behind the white-haired lady. The water droplet was only the size of a thumb, crystal clear and beautiful. Water soul. Nangong Wan looked at the white-haired lady, if I'm not wrong, the 5 elements sacred spirits are in your hands. The white-haired lady smiled, you're half right. As soon as she finished speaking, a golden ball suddenly appeared on her right. The golden ball emitted a faint golden glow and contained an extremely terrifying energy. On the white-haired lady's left, there was a wooden branch and a small clay man. The wooden branch was dark green and there were 2 green leaves on it. The small clay man was only the size of a palm but looked like a real person. At this moment it was smiling at Shao Qi and the others. 5 elements sacred spirits. Shao Qi looked at the white-haired lady, that's it? The white-haired lady smiled, still not enough? As soon as she finished speaking, the small clay man beside her suddenly rushed out. The moment it rushed out, Xiang Qing who was beside Shao Qi suddenly took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. Bang! A wave of sword energy spread out and everyone retreated. As for Xiang Qing who had attacked with his sword, he retreated again and again. This time, he retreated to the surface of the sea thousands of meters away. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression became solemn. Was this small clay man so abnormal? In the distance, the little mud man grinned. In the next moment, it charged towards Xiang Qing again. It was too fast, and everywhere it passed, space was directly torn apart by it. Xiang Qing's eyes narrowed slightly while a trace of seriousness could be seen in his eyes. He didn't dare act carelessly, and he immediately took a step forward. In an instant, an expanse of sword energy surged forward. Rumble. In practically an instant, the seawater beneath Xiang Qing's feet instantly evaporated while he retreated explosively once more. He was suppressed. Xiang Qing was instantly suppressed as soon as the battle began. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman suddenly smiled, this swordsman isn't bad. As soon as she finished speaking, the wooden branch by her side suddenly floated forward, and then numerous vines suddenly appeared in the surroundings. The vines seemed as if they were growing out of space, and they were extremely terrifying. Meanwhile, Xiang Yu suddenly stood in front of Shao Qi, and then strands of sword energy swept towards the surroundings like a net. Hiss! Hiss! Hiss. Numerous dense sounds of cutting resounded incessantly in the surroundings. It wasn't just the vines that were being sliced apart, even the space in the surroundings was being sliced apart. It was an extremely shocking sight. Meanwhile, the wooden branch suddenly floated towards Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu's figure shook, and he flew up into the air. He'd only just flown up into the air when a sharp vine suddenly shot up from below. Xiang Yu's gaze was icy cold as he swiftly swung his sword. Hiss. As the sword slashed down, the sharp vine was directly split into two. But in the next moment, countless vines drilled out from the space around Xiang Yu. They were densely packed, and Xiang Yu was instantly drowned by them. Moreover, a ray of sword energy could be faintly seen amidst the vines. Shao Qi gazed at the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman grinned, and then the golden ball suddenly shot towards the Guanzhong blade by Shao Qi's side. The Guanzhong blade suddenly drew its blade. Bang! An expanse of golden light suddenly erupted, and then both the Guanzhong blade and the golden ball were pushed back at practically the exact same time. But in the next moment, both of them shot explosively towards each other. Meanwhile, the ball of water by the white-haired woman's side suddenly shot towards Yan Dao. Yan Dao's face was expressionless. He took a step forward, and a ray of sword energy suddenly flashed across the field. Saber energy flashed. Rumble. The surrounding space instantly cracked, but in the next moment, the surrounding space returned to normal. In the next moment, numerous water dragons suddenly appeared in the surroundings and shot towards Yan Dao. The densely packed water dragons were extremely frightening. Not far away, Yi Xian's face was solemn because he found that the people on Shao Qi's side were all suppressed. It was as if these spirits were invulnerable, and their strength was endless. The most terrifying thing was that the surrounding space seemed to be helping these spirits. Spirits of heaven and earth. Blessed by heaven and earth. Yi Xian looked at the white-haired woman, who still had the flame in her hand. The white-haired woman glanced at the people around Shao Qi, and then her gaze fell on Yu Zangxing, who was holding a long spear. Yu Zangxing nodded slightly, and he walked forward. The flame in the white-haired woman's hand suddenly floated out. The moment it floated out of her palm, the surrounding temperature skyrocketed, making people feel as if they were in the middle of a volcano. It was extremely terrifying. Yu Zangxing's face was expressionless, and he raised his spear. Bang! A flame instantly erupted, and a wave of fire instantly engulfed the surroundings. However, the space around Shao Qi, the white-haired woman, and the others was very normal, and the flames automatically dispersed. At this moment, there were 4 people by Shao Qi's side. Master Lu Fu of the Confucian Institution, Han Yuzi of the School of Military, and Wang Jingji and Yuan Yi of the School of Vertical and Horizontal. Of course, Nangong Wan didn't count. After all, she didn't have any combat strength. At this moment, Master Lu Fu suddenly smiled. I wonder what you're going to use against the 3 of us. The white-haired woman looked at Master Lu Fu and smiled. Don't worry. As soon as she finished speaking, she gently pointed her finger to the right. In an instant, the island split open, and a terrifying aura suddenly appeared. Under everyone's gazes, a huge black beast suddenly walked out from the ground. The huge beast was 30 meters tall, shaped like an ox, and completely black. It emitted an extremely terrifying and primordial aura. Seeing this huge beast, a voice suddenly resounded from Yi Xian. This is the D-Monarch beast. The voice of the Emperor Hound. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, what's the D-Monarch beast? The Imperial Hound spoke solemnly, the guardian beast of the soul race. The guardian beast of the soul race? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, it's your sworn enemy? The Imperial Hound replied, yes. Yi Xian said, are you going to come out and fight it? The Imperial Hound spoke furiously, what the hell? Even though it isn't at its peak, it's clearly not far from it. What about me? I'm in a weak state right now. Should I come out and ask for a beating? Yi Xian spoke solemnly, Brother Imperial Hound, have your injuries not healed yet? The Imperial Hound spoke solemnly, it's not that I haven't healed, but my bloodline might be evolving. It's a critical period right now, so I can't attack. Once my bloodline evolves, this fellow will be trash before me." Yi Xian was speechless. Not too far away, the white-haired woman suddenly smiled. "D-Monarch, play with our city lord Yi." Yi Xian instantly flared up. "What the hell? I'm not playing with it." The white-haired woman smiled. "Actually, I've been eyeing you for a long time. But in order to deal with Divine Nation, I've been busy. And that Star Lord is extremely stupid. Let's not talk about that stupid fellow. Since you're here, I can't let you escape no matter what this time." As soon as she finished speaking, the D-Monarch beside her charged directly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian found it hard to breathe due to the strong pressure exerted by this charge. Yi Xian was shocked and angry. Suddenly, he pointed the soul-suppressing sword at the D-Monarch and shouted, "Evil creature, do you know what this is? I am the reincarnation of Hades, hurry up and kneel. Little soul. P.S. I can't wait for the 15th, erupt tomorrow. Erupt tomorrow." Chapter 630. Everyone was stunned when they heard Yi Xian's words. And that Di Jun actually stopped. The white-haired woman frowned slightly. Di Jun looked at Yi Xian with a trace of confusion in his eyes. "Human, why is this sword in your hands?" Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Di Jun stop. This fellow was definitely not someone he could go against right now. Yi Xian said coldly, "Why is it in my hands? Don't you have any idea?" Di Jun frowned. "What do I have?" Yi Xian said angrily, "This is the Soul Clan's treasure. Why is it in my hands? Think about it. Think about it." Di Jun thought for a moment and said, "You stole it." Yi Xian was speechless. Di Jun felt that his idea was correct, so his gaze gradually became hostile. At this moment, the soul-suppressing sword suddenly floated in front of him. Soul said, "Di Jun, do you know me?" Soul. Di Jun was stunned. You are Little Soul Lord," Soul said. "Di Jun, he is the successor that Master personally appointed. If you dare to hurt him, Master will definitely not let you off." Master. Di Jun's expression changed when he heard this word. Hades. He naturally could not forget this person. This person was his true master. Di Jun glanced at Yi Xian. Why did Master choose him? Soul said, "This is Master's choice. Besides that, he is Jian Zizai's younger brother. If you hurt him, that woman will definitely not let you off." Jian Zizai. When the D-Lord heard these three words, a look of fear appeared in his eyes. In that era, both the Divine Clan and the Nether Clan were extremely afraid of Jian Zizai. When this woman went crazy, she would even slaughter her own clansmen. After a moment of silence, Di Jun looked at the white-haired woman nearby. "I can't hurt him." The white-haired woman smiled. "Sure. Find someone else." Di Jun turned to look at Yuan Yi, who was not far away. In the next moment, he charged towards Yuan Yi. Yuan Yi had an emotionless expression on her face. In the next moment, the staff in her grasp suddenly started to tremble, and then numerous blades of wind gradually appeared here. These blades of wind were sharp like blades, and space was instantly sliced apart in their path. As for Di Jun, he used his physical body to resist it. He charged forward and shattered all the wind blades. When he arrived in front of Yuan Yi suddenly appeared 10,000 feet away. In the next moment, countless bolts of lightning appeared around Di Jun. These bolts of lightning directly drowned Di Jun. Boom boom boom. The surrounding space trembled violently. Not long after, the D-Lord stepped out of the thunderbolts. Then, a powerful force swept towards Yuan Yi, who was not far away. Yuan Yi closed her eyes and chanted softly with the staff in her hand. Soon, powerful forces gathered from all directions. In the next moment, she suddenly opened her eyes and pointed the staff in front of her. Break. Rumble. A powerful force suddenly erupted in front of her, and then the D-Lord was instantly pushed over 1 kilometer back. As soon as D-Jun stopped moving, the space before him suddenly started to seethe. In the next moment, Yuan-Yi tapped the staff lightly, lock. As soon as she finished speaking, numerous translucent chains locked onto D-Jun. Spatial chains. As soon as he was trapped, numerous bolts of lightning engulfed him like a storm. However, it wasn't long before D-Jun suddenly roared furiously and shattered the spatial chains. In the next moment, his figure leaped up and collided with Yuan-Yi. Yuan-Yi's face was emotionless. She opened her left palm, and there was a golden talisman there. As soon as she chanted, the golden talisman started to tremble violently. When D-Jun arrived around 3 m away from Yuan-Yi, the golden talisman in Yuan-Yi's hands suddenly flew out. In the next moment, a strand of energy capable of obliterating the world erupted from within the golden talisman. Bang! The D-Jun was forcefully stopped on the spot. At the same time, the ocean water around the island suddenly shot into the sky, and it instantly drowned the D-Jun. The D-Jun roared madly with fury and intended to charge out of the ocean water. However, the ocean water slowly turned into ice. A short moment later, all the ocean water had turned into ice, and the D-Jun was frozen solid. The white-haired woman still had a faint smile on her face when she witnessed this scene. Yuan-Yi glanced at the white-haired woman, and then she moved aside. Yi Xian glanced at Yuan-Yi. She's extraordinarily strong. Suddenly, the Imperial Hound's voice resounded, watch out. Yi Xian hurriedly gazed at Yuan-Yi, watch out. Yuan-Yi gazed at Yi Xian. A moment later, the frozen D-Jun suddenly charged out of the ice prison, and a powerful aura swept through the surroundings. Rumble. Yuan-Yi was instantly blasted 3 kilometers back. At this moment, the D-Jun beast was emanating a strange aura. The Imperial Hound suddenly said, it's going berserk. That little girl is in danger. Yi Xian gazed at the D-Jun. The D-Jun beast was charging at Yuan-Yi, and it was more than twice as fast as before. Yuan-Yi's expression became slightly solemn when she witnessed this scene. She waved her staff lightly, and the space before her instantly became illusory. It didn't take long for countless mysterious flames to appear in the surroundings, and they instantly drowned the D-Jun beast. However, the flames weren't able to cause any lethal harm to the D-Jun beast. Suddenly, the white-haired woman gazed at Yi Xian and smiled, soul suppression sword. I didn't expect that. Yi Xian spoke solemnly, were you the one who gave the Star-Lord orders? The white-haired woman grinned, what do you think? Yi Xian fell silent. It was obvious that it was definitely the woman who gave the order. Otherwise, the Star-Lord wouldn't have attacked him like a madman even though he knew that the situation was disadvantageous to the Star-Lord. After all, she was the true mastermind behind all of this. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman smiled, that treasure of yours is amazing. After all, I've gathered most of the treasures in the chaotic universe, but none of them can compare to that pagoda of yours. Why don't you give it to me? Yi Xian's face was expressionless, why don't I give it to you? The white-haired woman roared with laughter, you're the second human in so many years that dares to speak to me like that. Yi Xian asked, who was the first? The white-haired woman looked at Shao Qi, it's her. However, all of you will pay for your foolish actions. As soon as she finished speaking, 3 old men appeared behind her. Shao Qi spoke softly when she saw the 3 of them, I understand now. You've been cultivating your own forces all these years. Shao Qi smiled, when your kingdom slaughtered my good sister all those years ago, I knew that the day would come when your blades would be pointed at me. If it was 1,000 years ago, I really wouldn't be able to resist all of you. Unfortunately, all of you were unlucky and encountered someone you couldn't defeat, and all the elites of your kingdom perished. Shao Qi nodded, there are all sorts of accidents in life, but this time, there won't be any. The white-haired woman smiled, actually, all of you want to kill me, but I also want to destroy your kingdom. All of you are too strong. It's not easy to control. As soon as she finished speaking, the three behind her charged at Master Lu Fu's group. A great battle began. Only Yi Xian, Shao Qi, and Nangong Wan were left. Shao Qi looked at Nangong Wan, and the latter bowed slightly before leaving. Nangong Wan was a strategist, not a warrior. After Nangong Wan left, Shao Qi looked at the white-haired woman. Do you want to fight me? The white-haired woman smiled. I've prepared an opponent for you. As soon as she finished speaking, a skinny old man suddenly appeared behind her. The skinny old man only had one leg, one arm, and only 2 or 3 strands of hair on his head. The skinny old man looked at Shao Qi with a calm expression. Shao Qi suddenly smiled. The white-haired woman smiled. Do you think I'm looking down on you? No, I value you a lot. After all, you're the most monstrous swordsman in the history of the chaotic universe. Yi Xian suddenly said, do I count? The white-haired woman looked at Yi Xian. Don't be so naughty. I'll deal with you later. Yi Xian, the white-haired woman looked at the skinny old man and smiled. It seems like the people of the chaotic universe have forgotten about you. The skinny old man said softly, you saved my life in the past, so I'll fight for you. The white-haired woman nodded. No matter who wins or loses, we're even. The skinny old man nodded, then looked at Shao Qi and said softly, it's hard to imagine that you're only in your teens. At this moment, Nangong Wan's voice suddenly resounded, Your Majesty, he's Emperor Shi Yuan, the first expert to become an emperor in the chaotic universe. He's said to be the strongest after the era of the god race. Emperor Shi Yuan. After the era of the god race, the chaotic universe's martial arts civilization was in a slump for a period of time. However, that didn't mean that there weren't any experts. Emperor Shi Yuan, this person was the most dazzling existence of that era. Because he was the first person to become an emperor since the era of the god race. Emperor Shi Yuan looked at Shao Qi, make your move. Shao Qi shook her head. Emperor Shi Yuan frowned, I'm not qualified for you to make your move. Indeed not. A middle-aged man suddenly appeared behind Shao Qi. The middle-aged man held a folding fan in his hand and had a faint smile on his face. I'm Gu Zhangwu, a small martial master of God Nation. Martial master. Gu Zhangwu wasn't an ordinary martial master. He was the martial master of all the armies in God Nation, including the most mysterious divine martial army and the Dark Guards. Most importantly, he was also one of Shao Qi's teachers. Emperor Shi Yuan glanced at Gu Zhangwu. Let's go somewhere else. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately disappeared. Gu Zhangwu glanced at the white-haired woman not far away. Your Majesty, be careful. After saying that, he disappeared. There were only 3 people left in the field. Yi Xian, Shao Qi, and the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman still had a faint smile on her face. She looked at Yi Xian. Let's exchange a few moves. Yi Xian was silent. The white-haired woman smiled. You don't dare? Yi Xian said softly, you really think I'm easy to bully, right? The white-haired woman nodded. Indeed. Yi Xian said softly, let's fight somewhere else. The white-haired woman smiled. Where else? Yi Xian said, let's fight in my tower. I promise I won't beat you to death. Shao Qi. Chapter 631. Enter the tower and fight. The white-haired woman suddenly roared with laughter. Yi Xian, you are really shameless. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. However, I am willing to enter the tower with you. Enter the tower. Yi Xian fell silent. He hadn't expected that the white-haired woman would actually be willing to enter the tower with him. Was she too confident or arrogant? She was definitely too confident. This was because this white-haired woman did not seem to be a fool. When she saw Yi Xian remain silent, she smiled. Are you afraid? Yi Xian shook his head. What is there to be afraid of? Let's go. At this moment, Seven suddenly said, I will go as well. Yi Xian looked at Seven and nodded. Come in. As soon as he finished speaking, the three of them vanished at the same time. Prison pagoda, within the tower. The white-haired woman looked around and said softly, "Is this something from the fifth dimension?" Seven sized up the surroundings as well. At this moment, the white-haired woman's gaze suddenly descended onto Xiao Linger. Xiao Linger looked at the white-haired woman with a wary gaze. The white-haired woman said softly, "Source spirit." Xiao Linger looked at the white-haired woman, "You aren't human." The white-haired woman smiled, "Indeed, I am not human." Xiao Linger hesitated for a moment and said, "Can all of you fight somewhere else?" She was afraid that her spirit tree would be lost if they fought here. The white-haired woman smiled, "If we fight somewhere else, your big brother won't have any chance of winning." Xiao Linger looked at Yi Xian and hesitated for a moment before she said, "Big brother, you can't beat her." She and the white-haired woman were actually the same type, so she could sense how strong the white-haired woman was. The white-haired woman suddenly smiled, "I don't intend to fight him." As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm. In an instant, the entire prison pagoda started to tremble. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. This woman wanted to forcefully subdue the prison pagoda? Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of the white-haired woman. You looked at the white-haired woman, scram. The white-haired woman grinned, "No." You suddenly said, "Return." As soon as he finished speaking, the General Dao Principle, the Dream Dao Principle, and the Space Dao Principle suddenly disappeared into the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Not only those three Dao Principles, but you also suddenly disappeared into the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. In an instant, Yi Xian's eyes widened. At this moment, Yu's voice sounded in his head, "Activate the prison tower." Yi Xian hurried to do as he was told. Soon, the prison tower was activated. An illusionary blood-red character, prisoner, quietly appeared above the white-haired woman's head. The white-haired woman's expression changed. In the next moment, the white-haired woman left the pagoda. However, the blood-red, prisoner, character was still above her head. Yi Xian also exited the prison pagoda. He looked at the white-haired woman not far away from him. At this moment, he felt that there was a mysterious power within his body. This power made him feel as if he could control everything. Yi Xian's expression suddenly turned ferocious. But at this moment, the power suddenly disappeared, and Yu and the Dao laws returned to the pagoda. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, "Don't stop. We'll kill her." Yu didn't answer. Instead, he returned to the fifth floor. Yi Xian was speechless. Across from Yi Xian, the white-haired woman looked at Yi Xian. "It has indeed recognized you as its master." At this moment, her expression was solemn, because in that instant, she felt danger. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Qi, "Miss Xiao Qi, I don't think there's a need. I'm going to waste my breath on her." Seven nodded. She looked at the white-haired girl and in the next moment, she disappeared. Qi. A ray of sword light flashed through the battlefield. At practically the exact same time, the white-haired woman suddenly retreated explosively. She'd retreated 500 kilometers, but the ray of sword light was still right in front of her. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman suddenly pressed her palms together. Her palms blocked the ray of sword light, but in the next moment, bang! The white-haired woman instantly retreated a few thousand kilometers. She'd left Yi Xian's field of vision with this retreat. Right at this moment, the space here suddenly became illusory. Yi Xian had a solemn expression on his face. It was caused by that sword strike. This was a space that had been created, but it had actually been unable to endure Xiao Qi's attack. In next to no time, the space here had become completely illusory, and everyone had appeared in the boundless starry sky. As for the white-haired woman, she'd suddenly returned to not too far away from Xiao Qi, and she gazed at her. What a formidable attack. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly punched Xiao Qi from afar. It was a very calm punch. But it contained the might to obliterate the world. Not too far away, Xiao Qi's face was expressionless. Her body suddenly became illusory, and in the next moment, the terrifying power released by the white-haired woman was suddenly cut apart. At the same time, the white-haired woman was forced back nearly 1,000 miles. As soon as the white-haired woman stopped moving, Shaoqi suddenly drew her sword. Hiss! A strand of sword energy tore through the sky. It seemed like it was about to tear the starry sky apart, and it was extremely terrifying. The white-haired woman opened her palm, and then she pressed it forward lightly. All things gather. Rumble. The space in front of her suddenly shook violently, and then a mysterious force instantly blocked that strand of sword energy. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman spoke once more, split. As soon as she finished speaking, the strand of sword energy was split apart and instantly vanished. Shaoqi walked slowly towards the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman chuckled, "If you want to defy the heavens, then I'm afraid this little bit of strength isn't enough." Shaoqi suddenly vanished. The white-haired woman's smile froze, and in the next moment, her figure became illusory. Meanwhile, Shaoqi had appeared behind her. Dead? Yi Xian was stunned not too far away. He wouldn't have died just like that, right? Meanwhile, the white-haired woman had suddenly appeared where Shaoqi had been standing just now. Shaoqi turned around to look at the white-haired woman, and the latter spoke softly, "You actually killed one of my clones." Clone. Not far away, Yi Xian's expression froze. He didn't expect that the one that Shaoqi killed was actually the white-haired woman's clone. Then, there was a problem. Was the one in front of him a clone or the main body? Yi Xian looked at Shaoqi, and she walked towards the white-haired woman. She walked really slowly. The white-haired woman looked at Shaoqi and smiled. "I have to say that you are indeed the most monstrous existence in the chaotic universe. Even if you were placed in the God race era, you would be able to look down on everyone." Shaoqi said softly, "This world doesn't need a Tendo." The white-haired woman smiled, "Without me, there will be other Tendo. There will also be other heavenly Daos, like you. If I lose, you will be the next heavenly Dao." Shaoqi shook her head, "I won't be a Tendo." The white-haired woman looked at Shaoqi, "Do you know how greedy you humans are? The destruction of one world after another is all because of the greed of you humans. If I wasn't controlling it, this chaotic universe would have been destroyed long ago." Shaoqi looked at the white-haired woman. The woman said softly, "Humans have to survive. To survive, we have to cultivate. To cultivate, we have to absorb spiritual energy. There is no other way." The white-haired woman laughed coldly, "So, this universe should be sacrificed?" Shaoqi shook her head, "There is no right or wrong. Everyone has to survive. Either you die or I die. Unless all humans and living beings die, otherwise, the universe will head towards destruction." The white-haired woman looked at Shaoqi, "Without you humans, the universe will live longer." Shaoqi said, "You don't have the right to comment because you are also absorbing the source of this universe. Moreover, you control the source and some special spiritual energy. You are no different from us humans." The white-haired woman said coldly, "If I don't cultivate, then won't I be slaughtered by you humans?" Shaoqi said, "If humans don't cultivate, then they will be slaughtered by you." When she said that, she looked at the white-haired woman, "I am a human, I am the ruler of the God country. I will fight for the people of the God country and stand on the side of humans." The moment she said that, she pulled out her sword. Pooh! A strand of sword energy flashed through the battlefield. In an instant, the white-haired woman's body turned illusory. But in the next moment, the illusory body condensed once more. The white-haired woman looked at Shaoqi and was about to speak when Shaoqi suddenly attacked. The sword slashed through the sky and the white-haired woman's body was instantly split into two. But in the next moment, her body condensed once more. Shaoqi stopped. The white-haired woman looked at Shaoqi and smiled, "Actually, you are right. We are on different sides. I can tell you that after I kill you, I will reorganize the chaotic universe. At that time, I will make sure that there are no humans in this universe. Humans are so annoying. Xiaoqi said softly, then you have to kill me first. The white-haired woman nodded, I will definitely kill you. You are the most annoying. The moment she finished speaking, she suddenly pressed her hands together. In an instant, the space in front of her was torn apart. In next to no time, a pitch-black hand grabbed out from the torn space. Xiaoqi was expressionless as she raised her hand and slashed. It was a very calm slash. However, it was this slash that directly shattered the hand. At the same time, a thread of sword energy pierced through the white-haired woman's forehead. Pooh! After the sword energy pierced through the white-haired woman's forehead, it didn't stop and tore through the sky. In next to no time, it disappeared into the starry sky. At this moment, the white-haired woman's illusory body had condensed once more. Seeing this, Yi Xian's face sank. Is this woman unkillable? The white-haired woman looked at Xiaoqi and smiled, I am the Tendo of this universe. As long as this universe is not destroyed, I will not die. No matter how powerful your sword Dao is, you can't kill me. Do you understand? Yi Xian suddenly asked, how did you learn this move? I want to learn it too. The white-haired woman looked at Yi Xian and smiled, Yi Xian, after I deal with her, I will deal with you. I still remember how you forcefully took my source energy that day. Yi Xian was speechless. Right at this moment, Seven suddenly said, lend me your sword for a moment. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he flicked his finger and the executing heaven sword appeared in front of Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi held the executing heaven sword and looked at the white-haired woman, I don't know if this sword can kill you. At this moment, the smile on the white-haired woman's face disappeared. She was extremely cold. The white-haired woman stared at Yi Xian with a gaze that was like a sword that could kill. At the side, Xiaoqi suddenly said, sometimes, external objects need to be used. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Also. Chapter 632. Executioner Heaven. When Xiaoqi held the sword, the expression of the white-haired woman finally changed. She really couldn't be killed in this chaotic universe. However, it would be a completely different story if this sword was included. Executioner Heaven. If the soul-suppressing sword was said to be specialized against souls, then Executioner Heaven was specialized against spirit beasts like Tendo. Just at that moment, Seven suddenly disappeared. Hiss. A ray of sword light flashed through the battlefield. Not far away, the expression of the white-haired woman changed. In the next instant, she had already retreated 1,000 li away. She didn't dare to take Xiaoqi's attack head-on. Xiaoqi walked slowly towards the woman. She walked very slowly, but her figure was gradually becoming ethereal. She was swift to the extreme. Yi Xian turned around to look at where the white-haired woman was. The white-haired woman was still retreating. She still didn't dare to take Xiaoqi's attack head-on. Meanwhile, Xiaoqi stopped moving, and she suddenly turned around to look at the Truth Lord Beast. At this moment, Yuan Yi was locked in fierce battle with the Truth Lord Beast. Xiaoqi glanced at the woman, and then she swung her sword towards the right. 3 kilometers away. Bang! The Truth Monarch Beast was instantly sent flying by a sword light. This time, it was sent flying for thousands of feet. As soon as it stopped moving, its entire body cracked apart and blood sprayed out. The Truth Lord Beast gazed at Xiaoqi with deep fear in its eyes. Its defense was extremely terrifying, but in front of this little girl, its physical defense was like paper. Especially when she was holding Executioner Heaven. Xiaoqi paid no attention to the Truth Lord Beast. She gazed at the woman who was staring at her. Xiaoqi didn't speak as well. She suddenly vanished, and then a ray of light flashed. It was swift to the extreme. The white-haired woman's eyes instantly narrowed when she saw this attack, and then she retreated explosively in the next moment. However, the ray of sword light was like a maggot that followed her closely. At this time, the white-haired woman flipped her palm, and a black spear appeared in her hands. She then thrust it out viciously. Rumble. The surrounding space violently trembled, and the spear in the white-haired woman's hand instantly shattered. The powerful force caused her to instantly retreat nearly 1,000 feet. The white-haired woman stared fixedly at Xiao Qi. She reached out, and in an instant, a black ruler appeared in her palm. At this time, Xiao Qi suddenly appeared in front of the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman swung the long ruler in her hand. Xiao Qi's sword came out. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a powerful force exploded in front of them. The white-haired woman retreated repeatedly, and she retreated for over 10 kilometers. As soon as she stopped moving, the ruler in her hand directly cracked apart. Although it wasn't completely broken, it was covered in cracks. It could be said that it was completely scrapped. Seeing this, the white-haired woman's face sank. This ruler was no ordinary Dao realm treasure. It was an ancient Dao realm treasure. However, it still could not stop that sword. The white-haired girl looked at Seven. At that moment, Seven suddenly disappeared. She was too quick. The white-haired woman's body trembled and she disappeared. Xiao Qi stopped and frowned slightly. She looked around and found that the white-haired woman was no longer there. Where did she go? Seven slowly closed her eyes. The Oracle sect. After a short moment, Nangong Wan's voice resounded in Seven's mind. She hasn't left. Seven looked around and said softly, "You aren't coming out?" There was no response. Seven suddenly turned around and swung her sword. Chi! Not far away, the 5 elements wood branch was suddenly slashed into pieces. Seven didn't stop. She swung her sword again. Thousands of meters away, a ball of flames instantly exploded and turned into nothingness. In an instant, the 5 elements' Holy Spirit was killed by her. As for the remaining Emperor Shi Yuan and the others, they retreated and didn't continue fighting. Everyone was looking at Seven, who was holding the heavenly retribution. Seven walked slowly towards Emperor Shi Yuan and the others. "Do you know where she is?" Emperor Shi Yuan said solemnly, "Sir, she has become one with this universe. If you kill her, it will severely affect this world." Seven said softly, "You don't have to worry about this. My theocracy will take care of everything." Emperor Shi Yuan glanced at Seven and didn't speak another word. Suddenly, the starry sky and the surroundings started to tremble. In next to no time, numerous strange barriers of light appeared in the surroundings, and they were like a cage that locked everyone here within it. Seven raised her hand and swung her sword. Hiss! A ray of light slashed against the barrier of light. Bang! The barrier of light shook violently and cracked apart, but it returned to normal in an instant. A formation. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings, and there were strange talismans flickering on the barriers of light. Suddenly, Xiang Qing said, "Shit! Our lifespans are flowing away." Their lifespans were flowing away. Everyone here was shocked. But right at this moment, Emperor Shi Yuan and the others suddenly vanished. Moreover, the lifespans of everyone within the formation were flowing away at an extremely swift pace. Seven took a step forward and swung her sword. Hiss! A barrier of light was instantly split apart, but it instantly healed in the next moment. Seven's beautiful brows knit together slightly when she witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, she suddenly gazed at Yi Xian, the spatial Dao law. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he withdrew the spatial Dao law. Seven said, "Change the space here." Yi Xian nodded, and then he started to utilize the spatial Dao law to change the space in the surroundings. But it didn't take long for a mysterious force to appear in the surroundings, and it started to consolidate the space in the surroundings. However, Yi Xian, who possessed the space Dao law, easily reorganized the space in the field. After the space was reorganized, the barriers of light in the surroundings started to break apart layer by layer, and it didn't take long for them to vanish without a trace. Xiang Qing and the others gazed at Yi Xian when they witnessed this scene. Needless to say, Yi Xian had surprised them quite a bit. Suddenly, the white-haired woman appeared before Yi Xian and the others. She gazed at Yi Xian, the Tao law of the fifth dimension. Only the Tao law of the fifth dimension could destroy her spatial Tao law with such ease. Yi Xian nodded, it's the Tao law of the fifth dimension. The white-haired woman gazed at Yi Xian, you're really annoying. I should have shown myself to deal with you. Yi Xian smiled and said, actually, I don't have any ill intentions towards you. Really, I only came here to fulfill my promise to Shao Qi. However, I didn't expect that you'd already been messing with me. I don't understand, is the temptation of this pagoda really that great? Even an existence like you is interested in it. The white-haired woman said flatly, not great. Then give it to me. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. Yi Xian looked at the white-haired woman, see? I wouldn't give it to you even if I threw it away. As he spoke, he tossed the prison pagoda down. Everyone, the white-haired woman looked at Yi Xian, and her face was terrifyingly dark. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly transformed into a black light that smashed into Yi Xian. Bang! Yi Xian was instantly sent flying. The prison pagoda did not give up and continued to smash towards Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian hurriedly said, Big brother, it's just a joke. Don't be like this. Bang bang bang, in the distant horizon, explosions rang out incessantly. Seven looked at the white-haired woman, it's time to end this. As she spoke, the executing heaven sword in her hand suddenly trembled violently. In the next instant, the white-haired woman's body trembled in fear. Executing heaven sword. This sword was used to punish the heavens in the past. Seven was about to attack, but at this moment, in the distant horizon, a powerful aura suddenly appeared. Seeing this, the white-haired woman's lips curled up, it seems like you can't kill me. Seven raised her head to look at the distant horizon, and in the vast horizon, a figure was rushing over. The strength of that aura caused the expressions of everyone behind Seven to turn solemn. Seven raised her head to look at that figure, and said softly, it seems like you're prepared. The white-haired woman laughed, what do you think? Seven shook her head and laughed, you think you can stop me like this? Naive. If I want to kill someone, who can stop me? Is that so? At this moment, that powerful aura had already appeared in front of Seven. It was a middle-aged man, and at his waist, there was a sword. South Sword Mountain. He was the sect master of Sword Sect when it was at its peak. P.S. There's more. Chapter 633. South Sword Mountain. Nangong Wan's expression sank when she saw this person. She had never expected that such a young person would actually appear here. This wasn't someone from this era. Jian Nanshan looked at Seven. Just as he was about to speak, Seven suddenly took a step forward and slashed with his sword. Qi! Something was being torn apart. The moment Shao Qi attacked, the sword on South Sword Mountain's waist also unsheathed. The sword was like lightning, incomparably swift. Boom! A wave of sword light erupted in front of Shao Qi and Jian Nanshan. In an instant, Jian Nanshan retreated thousands of feet. Shao Qi had also retreated 1,000 zhang. Jian Nanshan looked at Seven and for the first time, a solemn expression appeared in his eyes. Sword God. He wasn't shocked that Seven was the sword god, but that Seven was young. Reaching the level of a sword god at such a young age could no longer be described as terrifying. Seven still didn't say anything and she suddenly disappeared. Buzz! The cry of a sword split the sky. Not far away, Jian Nanshan narrowed his eyes. His right hand gripped the hilt of his sword, and in the next moment, he pulled it out. Qi! A wisp of sword light slashed down from above. Meanwhile, Shao Qi's voice resounded abruptly, break. As soon as Shao Qi finished speaking, Jian Nanshan's sword light instantly shattered, and so did Jian Nanshan's sword. Seeing this scene, the white-haired woman not far away frowned slightly. Jian Nanshan looked at the sword in Seven's hand. Good sword. Seven was expressionless. She waved her hand and the executing heaven's sword flew back to Yi Xian. Seven looked at Jian Nanshan. I won't bully you. As soon as she finished speaking, she lightly stomped her right foot. Chi. Beneath his feet, sword light flashed. In the distance, Jian Nanshan opened his palm and a wisp of sword light flew out from his palm. The sword light was as fast as lightning, tearing through space. Boom! In front of the two of them, two sword lights instantly exploded. Right at this moment, Shao-Chi suddenly leaped up. In the next moment, a beam of sword light slashed down from above Jian Nanshan's head. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Jian Nanshan retreated tens of thousands of feet. At this moment, Shao-Chi suddenly pointed at Jian Nanshan, slash. As the word fell, a sword light suddenly chopped down from the top of Jian Nanshan's head. In the distance, Jian Nanshan grinned, interesting. As soon as he finished speaking, he stomped his right foot. Rumble. The entire starry sky trembled violently. In the next moment, he transformed into a ray of sword light that shot into the sky. Boom! In the air, Shao-Chi's sword light shattered. But at that moment, Shao-Chi suddenly disappeared. Boom! In the distance, Jian Nanshan had instantly retreated tens of thousands of feet. But before he could stop, a sword light instantly tore apart Jian Nanshan's position. Boom! Jian Nanshan retreated again. This retreat was 1,000 miles. At this time, Seven's eyes slowly closed. After a moment of silence, she suddenly opened her eyes and pointed at Jian Nanshan. One sword destruction. Chi. A strand of sword light as thin as a hair flew out from Shao-Chi's fingertip. Wherever the sword light passed, the space immediately became illusory. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings instantly became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. Because the illusory space had disappeared. Even Tendo's space Dao law couldn't repair it. Jian Nanshan's expression instantly turned solemn when he saw Shao-Chi's sword. He still didn't take out the sword at his waist. Because Shao-Chi didn't use a sword either. If he did, then he would lose in terms of imposing aura. Everyone watched as Jian Nanshan slowly closed his eyes, and then an illusory sword suddenly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, he tapped the hilt of the illusory sword with his finger. OM. A sword howl resounded. The illusory sword was blasted flying. It seemed like it intended to pierce through the starry sky, and it was extremely formidable. Meanwhile, Shao-Chi's sword light arrived before him. Bang! The entire starry sky suddenly shook violently. In an instant, Jian Nanshan's illusory sword exploded into pieces, but Shao-Chi's sword light was still there. The sword light shot straight at Jian Nanshan. Jian Nanshan's expression remained unchanged. He took a step forward and tapped the sword light with his finger. Bang! The sword light was forcibly stopped by his finger. Suddenly, Shao-Chi appeared in front of Jian Nanshan. Jian Nanshan's eyes narrowed slightly. In the next moment, the space around them was covered in strands of sword light. This continued for around 15 minutes before the sword light vanished, and then Shao-Chi walked out from within it. The white-haired woman's face instantly turned gloomy when she witnessed this scene. On the other hand, the experts of the God Kingdom heaved sighs of relief. The sword light behind Shao-Chi dispersed, and Jian Nanshan appeared before their eyes. At this moment, Jian Nanshan's arms had been severed, but he was still alive. Jian Nanshan gazed at Shao-Chi. Why didn't you kill me? Shao-Chi stopped moving. Why did you protect Tendo? Jian Nanshan fell silent for a moment before he said, I owed her a favor all those years ago. Shao-Chi nodded. You've repaid her kindness, so you can leave. Jian Nanshan asked, why didn't you kill me? Shao-Chi spoke softly. There aren't many swordsmen left. There aren't many formidable swordsmen left. Jian Nanshan took a deep and long glance at Shao-Chi before he turned around and left. After Jian Nanshan left, Shao-Chi gazed at the white-haired woman. Besides myself, no one can stop me from killing you. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly vanished. The white-haired woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and then her body suddenly became ethereal. In the next moment, numerous afterimages appeared around Shao-Chi. Rumble. The entire starry sky started to tremble violently as strands of powerful force surged out incessantly. The entire starry sky started to seethe, and it was extremely terrifying. However, as soon as Shao-Chi's sword slashed down, the afterimages instantly vanished without a trace, and the white-haired woman had retreated over 10 kilometers away. She stared fixedly at Shao-Chi. If I die, then the quintessence energy of the chaotic universe will vanish along with me. At that time, no one from the chaotic universe will be able to break through into the Imperial Emperor realm. Shao-Chi walked slowly towards the white-haired woman. Are you threatening me? The white-haired woman smiled. You can think of it that way. Shao-Chi spoke softly. I thought that you would die with some backbone. I never expected that. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly vanished. Hiss. A ray of light tore through the sky. Emperor Shi Yuan I spoke softly. You leave first. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood in front of the white-haired woman and slowly clenched his right fist. A moment later, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble. The space in front of Emperor Shi Yuan I exploded apart, but it wasn't able to stop that ray of light. Bang! Emperor Shi Yuan I instantly retreated explosively while countless rays of light sliced through his body. When Emperor Shi Yuan I stopped, only his soul remained. Emperor Shi Yuan I stared fixedly at Shao-Chi with deep fear in his eyes. However, the white-haired woman didn't flee. There were 3 old men behind her. She suddenly said, all of you can leave. They gazed at the white-haired woman, and the latter smiled. You've repaid your kindness. You don't owe me anything. The 3 old men exchanged glances, and then they turned around and left. They had no chance of winning. After all, practically no expert in this expanse of space could stop the ruler of the chaotic universe. Once the 3 old men left, the white-haired woman gazed at Shao-Chi and smiled. It won't be that easy to kill me. As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her palm. In an instant, the surrounding space started to tremble violently, and it didn't take long for countless strands of spirit energy to converge towards her. It didn't take long for her aura to rise explosively. The expressions of everyone here instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. Is the Tendo going to detonate himself? What would happen if the Tendo detonated himself? The entire chaotic universe would definitely be affected. Shao-Chi's face was expressionless. Her left hand was already on the sword at her waist. No. Just then, a voice suddenly came from the end of the space. As soon as the voice finished, a man appeared in the air. His speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. The newcomer had a long saber and a sword at his waist. Yi Zhantian. Saber and sword duel master. With Yi Zhantian's appearance, the white-haired woman immediately stopped. Seeing that the white-haired woman had stopped, Yi Zhantian's expression relaxed. Your Excellency Tendo, your life concerns the safety of the entire chaotic universe. How can you detonate yourself? The white-haired woman smiled. If I wasn't forced into a dead end, why would I take this path? Hearing this, Yi Zhantian turned to look at Shao-Chi. He was about to speak when Shao-Chi suddenly took a quick step forward and slashed down with her sword. Yi Zhantian narrowed his eyes and suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Hum. A sword's hum resounded, and a wave of sword light exploded between the two. In an instant, Yi Zhantian was knocked back hundreds of feet. After stopping, Yi Zhantian's eyes were solemn. At such a young age, your swordsmanship has already reached such a level. Back then, he could also be considered a genius. But now, after seeing Shao-Chi, he realized that the person in front of him was a true genius. Shao-Chi looked up at the sky and said softly, Tendo, how many people did you call? The white-haired woman looked at Xiao Qi and did not speak. Xiao Qi chuckled. I'll wait. When the time comes, we'll deal with them together. Otherwise, it'll be too troublesome. Not far away, Yi Zhantian looked at Xiao Qi. Your Excellency, don't you think you're a little too arrogant? Xiao Qi looked at Yi Zhantian. Your name is Yi Zhantian. I heard that you're a sword and saber duel master. Yi Zhantian was expressionless. Why? Xiao Qi chuckled. Do you deserve the word duel? Yi Zhantian narrowed his eyes and was about to speak when Xiao Qi suddenly pointed a finger. Retreat. A ray of sword light flashed across the battlefield. In the distance, Yi Zhantian suddenly pulled out his sword. Boom! A ray of sword light suddenly exploded. Xiao Qi was already at Yi Zhantian's position. At this moment, Yi Zhantian had already retreated thousands of feet away. Not only that, but the sword in his hand was also broken. Yi Zhantian was silent. Xiao Qi slowly walked toward Yi Zhantian. Come, let me see your sword. Coincidentally, my god nation also has 2 sword users. Let them see. Hearing Xiao Qi's words, Yan Dao suddenly walked out. Your Majesty, let me fight with him. Xiao Qi shook her head. I don't want to waste time. As she spoke, she looked at the white-haired woman not far away. Today, you must die. Is that so? A voice suddenly came from beside Xiao Qi. Everyone in the field was shocked. Because no one saw when the person next to Xiao Qi appeared. Who was it? You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.